Margaret. Cliff.
Hi, Jen.
We are live, but obviously the meeting has not quite started yet, but just to let you know. Piper, I muted you. You can unmute yourself. We're live, but not recording it.
Was I making noise with my calculator?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Hi. Hello. Okay, well, it is now 3 o'clock. Shall we get started? And we have all of our town council members here, it looks like to me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Okay. So I'll be calling to order the virtual work session of the Alta Town Council on Wednesday, January 13th. The first order of business is for me to read a determination about conducting a Town of Alta public meeting without an anchor location. So I, Harris Sundak, as the mayor of the town of Alta, hereby determine that conducting a meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location pursuant to Utah Code Section 52-4-2074 and Town Resolution 2020 R12. The facts upon which this determination is based include the percentage number of positive COVID-19 cases in Utah has been significantly higher since May 27, 2020. This is the same text as I read last week. So the 7-day average for cases on December 30th is 2288, with about half the state's cases in Salt Lake County. As of December 30th, 2020, there have been 1,269 deaths reported in Utah thanks to COVID-19. This meeting will not have a physical anchor location. All attendees will connect remotely. Attendees may join the webinar by registering for the meeting through the town website, which is www.townofelta.com, or the meeting can be watched on YouTube. And I see that we're live now. Additionally, comments may be emailed to the town clerk at plever@townofelta.com. This determination will expire in 30 days on, so 30 days from the 31st, Polly, or is it 30 days from today?
It's from the date of the
This
letter.
determination. Yeah, I didn't quite hear you, but I think you said of this document, January 29th, 2021.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Sorry.
You're a little quiet still, but you might be able to turn up the gain on your microphone. Okay. So we have three items on the agenda. The first one is about ranked choice voting, where I did some research. The second is the discussion of proposed budget amendment, and then the parking discussion that Mike Mon has asked us to have. I would propose, so let me say, just as a preview, I did some research on ranked choice voting. The issue is within my academic wheelhouse of expertise because my dissertation was about something called social choice theory, which ranked choice voting is one way of making a social choice. So this is going to sound a little bit academic, I guess. I don't know if I can help myself exactly on this kind of thing. So I might propose that we move this to the back end rather than start with it, just so that we make sure I don't go too long. Does that make sense to everybody? Any objections just to moving this to item 3? Okay. Just as a, I'll tie myself to the mast of being quiet at 4 o'clock about this issue. Cliff, you want to say something?
Mr. Mayor, do you have a plan to explain this so that an intelligent 6th grader could understand it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Okay, and it may be that you guys cut me off, or we don't have enough time for me to get into this, and I'll try to make it. Maybe there's a ranked choice voting for dummies book that I should have looked at, Cliff. I don't know. I mean, it turns out to be a pretty complicated issue. Okay, so anyway, let's move on to the discussion of the proposed budget amendment. You've all had a copy of that, and there are two main reasons for us to do this way with the numbers that we put in here. The reason to do this halfway through the year is because the budget's basically a projection. And especially on a year like this, with the kind of uncertainties that we've been facing with the pandemic, projections often are not perfectly accurate, of course, and so we try to recalibrate halfway through the year. We always have to do a budget reconciliation at the end of the year as well, so it seems like halfway through the year makes sense. The two big substantive issues on this proposed change, and I'll hand it over to Piper here in just a second, but the biggest, I guess there's three. One is we tried to reconcile on better information. So we had real information instead of projections, and we calibrated based on that. So that's some of the smaller changes. Mike Morey has explained to us that there is a records management system required under changes in the state law. And that's a fairly, turns out to have been a fairly, or will be an relatively expensive acquisition. There were a couple of ways to go about this, and we didn't expect it to be this expensive upfront because we thought that we'd end up with some kind of basically a subscription service. But Mike has done the research, and we'll talk to him in just a minute about this proposal. But he's done the research, and it turns out that after a few years, we will be financially better off if we make a bigger upfront payment and a smaller subscription fee. And so that's a fairly big number. It's about, so I think, Mike, it's $15,000. So that's in here. And then the other big number change in this budget is we got a lot of CARES Act money. And so that allowed us, essentially what we did with that was we lowered our projected revenues from sales tax, but we didn't have to lower all the expenditures commensurate with that change because we could then include additional revenues from CARES Act. So it supplants some of the sales tax revenue. And this is, so what it amounts to is it's a more conservative approach to the sales tax environment that we're in given the pandemic. Piper, do you want to correct anything I just said or amplify anything I just said?
No, you covered the two main reasons, well, three main reasons for making the adjustment. The two that you mentioned about the CARES Act and the RMS system, and then also just to take a close look and see how we are standing, how we had guessed back in June, how we would be doing, and to make sure we're on track. And when I sent out this last week on the 6th, it looks like, I have a number, about 20 bullet points that explain most of the adjustments, but I'm open to answer questions.
Yeah, and I can share the document if that would be helpful, so that if there are any questions, we could look at the specific lines. So why don't I do that? Okay, so you should be seeing the PDF doc version of this now, and let me make it a little bit. Okay, so this is the top of the document, and you can see here's the big change in the sales tax. So we ended up with about 140,000 of CARES Act reimbursed money. Right?
Some of that was already budgeted.
Right. But so, well, the point is we lowered the sales tax assumption by 100,000.
Yeah.
And there isn't a perfect, I mean, there's not a great explanation for why 100,000 seemed like the right number. It's what we could afford in this budget, and it was a nice round number, basically. And it brings us, our assumption for sales tax, as you can see, it brings it down, you know, pretty substantially. We're now at 724 instead of the actual prior year's 1,257,000.
Yeah, and that, you know, some people just still aren't sure what our number's going to be, you know, how the lower, well, it remains to be seen whether the ski lifts company stays open, Scariest stays open, the lodges stay open.
Right.
But we're down to, 2 years ago, almost 50%. So I think it's a conservative estimate, and personally, I expect it to be much higher, but if we stay open, but that's the number it is to be conservative.
Right. I mean, one indicator of how we're doing is those sales tax receipts to date, but unfortunately they lag. So we don't have December's numbers yet. In fact, I don't think the businesses are required to submit to the state this soon after the close of the month. I think they have a whole month to do that.
They have 30 days to do that. Yep.
Right. So we have it's a lagging indicator. November, we did pretty well compared to last November. It's just that November is not a great test case month. December is going to tell us more. Okay. Any comments or questions there? So that was the big one there. And then in the other big one, and it was nice, it was helpful, I think, that you highlighted the changes. Here's the CARES Act money. So it's 133,000 beyond what was already in the budget. And then we
So
could
Mayor,
change. I'm
can
sorry.
I was just going to say the first disbursement that we got, the first 11,000, that was just in the previous fiscal year that we collected that.
Okay.
Just
So that's here.
that's clear to everybody.
Right. Good. Right. Because it came in, it was money that we spent in March, April, May. And
Correct.
June. Right. Okay.
Yeah, when we were making the budget, the money hadn't come yet, so we knew what the number was, so we had budgeted that amount, but it came in like days before the beginning of the fiscal year, I believe.
Okay. Good. And then the big other change, these are small, just based on what we've actually spent or taken in. The police department, where is it? This is where the 15,000 is.
Yes.
So that's a fairly big change from what we had budgeted. Mike, do you want to say something about that system so that everybody can hear it in this meeting?
Sure. Can everybody hear me? I've got a little sign on my laptop saying my connection's unstable.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I feel like I need to give a little history lesson so that the conversation makes sense. I'll try and go as rapidly as I can. RMS, which is an abbreviation for Records Management System, has been a big item of concern for us for years. We've been trying to work towards having a system for our police records that's compliant in a number of areas, which our current system is not. A mandate came down from the state of Utah under pressure from the FBI for all law enforcement agencies to switch from their crime reporting from a system called UCR, which is Uniform Crime Reporting, to a system called NIBRS, which is National Incident-Based Reporting System. We had been participating in the UCR system, which involved a monthly hand search of records from the police department so that we could upload demographics about crimes occurring in Alta. The NIBRS is a much more complicated and robust system that gets into detailed demographics of criminal activity, not only in relation to the people that are committing crimes, but to the victims of the crimes also. It's a much more stringent standard on law enforcement to accurately report this information to the state of Utah Bureau of Criminal Identification, who in turn uploads it to the FBI. Both use it for their crime in Utah and crime in the United States annual reports. It's really a big engine for driving Department of Justice grant programs. The deadline for being NIBRS compliant was January 1st, so we're already past the deadline. We're working with the state. They're giving us a little bit of wiggle room to become compliant in NIBRS reporting. One of the technical requirements of NIBRS reporting is that you have to have an RMS system that's capable of an electronic upload into the state system, which we do not. We honestly, I own part of this. I thought we had a deadline further out than we did, and so we've scrambled. And as we've gone to find out what we can do to become compliant, we've talked to several RMS vendors. Our first path was to see if we could just contract with one of our partner agencies that's using a compliant system. We tried to have that conversation with the Unified Police Department. Unfortunately, they don't a la carte their services out. It's either be a contract agency or not. So then we went shopping locally to see if maybe there was another local agency that would sponsor us into having access into that system. And unfortunately, again, we got no takers. So then we proceeded to direct talks with vendors. In Salt Lake County, there's a big push for everybody to be operating on a common records management system. And this all has to do with some of the VEC 911 center issues that we discussed last year. The vendor for that system is a company called Versaterm. We reached out to them and they actually declined to bid for us, knowing our budget, and anecdotally told us that they couldn't even get us started for less than $100,000. And so we started looking at smaller systems that might be interoperable with the state system. And we came upon two vendors that we thought met our needs and the requirements. And that was Adjacent RMS1 Technologies from Alabama and eForce Technologies from Logan, Utah. Adjacent currently does not have an upload tool into the state system, so we expect there would probably be some IT costs in creating a link for those two databases to talk to each other. Adjacent is a monthly subscription service, so they would provide us records management capability for approximately $495 a month, with probably some incremental increases as the economy dictates. And eForce is more of an upfront, you pay for the product, and then they have a much lower annual maintenance cost of about $1,500. eForce is compliant with the Utah BCI system, so there's no need to create an upload tool with eForce. Several Utah agencies use eForce. If we went with Adjacent RMS1, we would be the only Utah agency to do so. eForce initially bid this project to us at $27,000 and change. And I think they, after several conversations, they became pretty sympathetic to our situation, and their CEO got involved, and they extended an internal grant from their company to us, lowering that $27,000 down to a $15,000 startup fee. So that was a substantial discount. And they are they're holding that quote through the end of January for us. Sarah McCloskey, our chief dispatcher, and I have been involved with all the vendors and meetings, and we've demoed the products, and we're both of the opinion that the eForce product is the most appropriate product for us to get compliance and for us to operate the police department going into the future. We know, based on the events from last year with Mr. Floyd, what an issue law enforcement transparency has become. Although it's not a mandate yet, use of force reporting is going to be dictated through these RMS systems probably in the near future. And both the adjacent and E-Force programs have use of force reporting tools. So we were glad to see that. Some other things that we're non-compliant in have a lot to do with our records retention schedule and the way we respond to public document requests under GRAMA. So our database that we use now is not searchable. So we have a hand search of records when we respond to a GRAMA request. So there's an accuracy concern with responding. These two databases that I've talked about are both searchable by any keyword. They have records retention tools in them and redacting tools for public record requests built into them. So both of these products really meet our needs to be compliant going into the future. We look at this as a very long-term investment.
So, Mike says that he got started a little late on this. I think he paid for that by having to spend a few extra nights and weekends on this project. If we were going with just a plain subscription, I might have just worked with Mike to get that out of his budget currently. But with a $15,000 upfront cost, it seemed like it needed to go into this conversation with the town council. It was a big enough difference. So after about 3 years, we'll be ahead by making this investment. In addition, we get to capture that big discount by moving on this now. Are there any questions about the budget? We'll take it up in the meeting, of course. We're not taking an action on this now. This was just to make sure that everybody, all the town council members were had any concerns addressed.
One, there are a couple of things, and I don't know, again, if it's appropriate here or later in the council meeting, but one thought I had, and it sounds like you and Mike and the team have done a great job researching this product and bringing the town into compliance. But one thought I had was that there is a federal program called the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program, where last year they gave $72 million in funds specifically for criminal justice funding to states and units of local government. I don't know if Mike or anybody is familiar with that program, but it looks specifically like it includes technology improvement programs and some other things that are listed. And it looked to me like it might be an avenue for us to get additional assistance. Whether or not it can be done immediately is probably not the case. The grant time period looked like you apply in July and you get and it's awarded in August. So it would be our next fiscal year, but it would be something potential to look at to see if there is a possibility of getting additional funds and then being able to take care of the budget of that item and other record keeping. And it also applies to the evidence locker stuff that's in the capital projects fund.
Mike, you look like you wanted to address this.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I failed to mention that one of the penalties of our status of non-compliance is we are not allowed to apply for or receive federal grants until we can become compliant. And that's just for the police department. That doesn't cover other aspects of the town.
Any other concerns?
Well, one other thing was about the removal of all the funds, or that ACVB was still scheduled to get, or was still had the line item of 42K. And I would really like the council to consider doubling the bonuses to staff this year. They didn't get a COLA increase, And they have been working in extreme conditions, as you know, and I think that that's something that we ought to consider putting out there, including adding a bonus to our sewer manager, who doesn't get a bonus right now under our project or under our process, and yet has done an excellent job this year.
Yeah,
More than
and as I mentioned to you in an email the other day, Margaret, working toward the end of the fiscal year, taking, if we have a decent year, going ahead and making sure that the staff compensation is a priority. So we'll come back to that in the next reconciliation for sure. But I think it's a little premature at this point because we don't know if we have the money in December and January and February, March like we usually do.
I just wanted to say good, job to the staff and Piper. I think I replied to this. I like that there was 2 different emails, one for the town council meeting and one for the work session, but also the email that Piper sent out to everybody on the budget. It's very thorough, and thank you.
Yes, Piper
Yeah.
deserves a lot of credit for that. Okay, all right, let's move on to the discussion that Mike Mon requested. I think we probably want Mike in this conversation, right, Jen?
He's on his way.
Okay, good.
Are you ready for me?
We are. Just as a little bit of background, Mike has some ideas about increasing the number. I think the bottom line is that he'd like to increase the number of parking spaces on the special use permitted parking by a little bit more than about 15%, another 220 spaces, and is seeking the town's endorsement of this. He and I had a couple of conversations about it, and I said, well, I have some questions, but I think the town council ought to weigh in on this conversation. So that's
Thank
how we
you.
got here.
Yeah, thank you, Harris. I mean, it's really, and it's a little bit broader than that. As is indicated in the letter, that this document, A Path Forward, was put together last year to kind of work with all the parties that were involved with the Mountain Accord to try to move forward some of the values and some of the things that we would try to accomplish in the Accord. And there's 3 parts to that. And on all 3 parts, we would love the town we'd like to know the town's position and concerns or whatever regarding any part of that proposal as we move it forward. We'd like to kind of make sure that we have answered all the questions and are hopefully we would have the support of the town going forward. The first part is the parking, and I'll come back to that one. The second part is trading some lands in Big Cottonwood Canyon that were in the proposed NCRA over in Mineral Fork by the wilderness, by just about a half mile from Lake Blanche, that for the mineral fractions that are scattered throughout our private land holdings in Grizzly Gulch and up and over into Solitude. There's an act that was passed in '83 that allows the Forest Service to exchange or sell mineral fractions that are surrounded by private land holdings. And so we had approached that as, if we were to do that exchange, it's kind of it cleans up the mineral fractions for the ski area, and then it takes a big 40-acre chunk that currently is private. I think it may be one of the few private parcels left in Mineral Fork, and puts it into Forest Service control and protection. And then the third part is to kind of accommodate or address the issue that there really is no access to the ridgeline right now on public land within the town of Alta. You have to cross private land wherever you go. It was trying to address some concerns from the backcountry community of having some access that's created. And we looked at saying, well, we could consider trading or selling the lands that we own like the Emmas that run from the Emmas and over above the current town's post office area, that with Salt Lake City Water for the lots that they own in Albion Basin and lands they have there. Most, I think all of them have conservation easements on them, which would restrict to some degree their development. But we felt that that would be a way to move that forward too. So I'll go back to any questions on those last two before I go to the parking lot one. Can't hear you, Harris.
Yeah, Mike, I've been told from Salt Lake City Public Utilities that while they may be interested in acquiring private property, they're not interested in giving up their property.
Lawrence Buffer has initially indicated that, and whether it goes to Salt Lake City or, there's another entity that chooses to step in, that needs to be worked out. We've just started the discussions with Laura in Salt Lake City. It may have to go to the Salt Lake City Council rather than through the Salt Lake City Water Department of Utilities to see if the council itself wants to move on that or not. And if not, it's for the ski area, it's not an integral part of this. We've looked at this as a way to address a concern that's been raised by the backcountry community, if you would, and not having that, because all their access crosses private land, and have provided an avenue or something for us to explore going forward. Other questions on the land, two land pieces? So they would be, we would look to, it's not the immediate concern. The immediate concern is the parking, but I would request the town to kind of talk about this, and if the town can be supportive, we would like to be able to receive that indication so we could pass that on to the Forest Service to move forward, at least with their portion of the land exchange. In regards to the parking issue, as we are all aware of, the interest in use of the backcountry, as well as growth of some businesses in the town of Alta and changes within Albion Basin in the town of Alta has resulted in more vehicles coming to the town of Alta that are not ski area patrons, and they have been consuming the parking that is part of Alta Ski Area special use permit, which we have developed to maintain on an ongoing basis. The last few years before COVID, it really started to become an issue as we started to fill the parking and find that we were losing as many as 200 spots or more on a given day to non-ski area patrons. We brought this issue up with the Forest Service. It's taken a little bit of time to kind of get on the same page, get everybody on the same page, but they have agreed and recognized now that is a ski area asset, and the ski area does have a right to use that asset when it needs it. And so we have tried to say, now look at, well, how do we deal with this problem going forward? Because we allow backcountry users to park in those lots. We allow town businesses, employees and such to park in those lots. We have Grizzly Gulch property owners parking in those lots and cabin owner people parking in those lots. So we met early back June and started to talk about, how do we resolve this issue? And it's really we're hoping it's just a short-term resolution, and that, we'll see a longer-term transportation solution that will make it a moot point in the future. But we looked at three, as in the document I had sent you that talked about the meeting held on June 25th, there were 3 or 4 things we had considered. One is we looked at, well, we could shut down the private lands to the backcountry, and we could shut down and restrict the parking just to ski area patrons. That's a pretty controversial and not, from our opinion, not the right way to go about it. Doesn't It's a significant change for everyone. The other idea we had talked about was, do we just take the north side of the canyon and make it a backcountry ski area, create additional parking and restrooms and charge people to go into that? That has its fair share of challenges too, in that we don't own all the private land. Snowbird owns a bunch, and it's over there too that would have to work out. And having, I don't think the backcountry community was they weren't excited about the idea of having to pay to go use those lots and to be able to go into that backcountry. And it also posed some challenges. Could you get people actually really to park in the lots that were designated from the backcountry? So then we also then explored with the Forest Service and the backcountry community of, do we create a new parking lot above the above the highway, up on that little kind of shelf right above the town's current post office and library area, that would have a road up there, and you'd have parking and restrooms for the backcountry and make that a backcountry trailhead. And that, it would be up to another party, the Wasatch Backcountry or the county or someone, to develop that lot. And we were willing to participate by plowing it as part of our contribution to that going forward. As we talked through that one, the discussion was, well, that's a good idea, but it's not exactly in the ideal spot from where everybody disperses to go into the backcountry. As you know, we have people parking all throughout the town at different places, depending on where in the backcountry their access point was. And then the third one, or the fourth option that we came up with was, if we were able to expand our parking in our permitted area, that makes some adjustments to current parking lots that would offset some of the parking that's being used by these other non-ski area patrons, that we could go in that direction and not have to change really much over what we're doing for the time being. We could continue down the path we're going. That, as we talked through all the alternatives, that one's the backcountry community, and at that time, I believe the town representatives were there. We felt that seemed to be the most appropriate course of action. So then we took the step of exploring in the primary location we were looking at for doing that expansion was between the Alta Lodge and the Rustler. And several reasons that's a great spot is it is potentially the spot for a potential transportation hub in the future. We looked at it being a win, it's a win if that parking was there and right across the street from a future Alta community center that could be parking for that center when it had events. And then also we looked at as we would be willing to use the material that would have to be moved for the community center for fill in that area, and that'd be a quick transport across the road and save the town the cost in the future of needing to move that material somewhere else or out of the canyon, and we would do that at our cost, so that be savings to the town. So we left that meeting in June with kind of that being the preferred alternative. We went out and started to do the development work to see if we could make that work. We found that really, the way the slope there is between the Alta Lodge and the Rustler, the further you push it out to the south, the more material you need. And so we kind of scaled that down to I think it's about 100 cars there, and looked at where else in this area adjacent to parking lots could we, square up or clean up things to make it so that we could get to that targeted number we were trying to accommodate for what's being consumed by the non-ski area patrons. And then in the document that I had sent you, I think it's the one that is called, the one that says a path for, which was the proposal to exchange lines with the parking. There is in that you can see a map that shows several areas highlighted in green that show the areas we looked at doing some adjustment to parking lots to accommodate that number. And those areas are still at some expansion. So you expand the Flagstaff lot out to the point where the Rustler Mine Dump goes now, about it, we just square that up. We would look at up in the Grizzly lot. The Grizzly lot is narrow at one point where on one side we park the cars nose in, on the other side they're parked parallel. Like to widen that a little bit so we can just park nose in on both sides. And then squaring up a little bit on both sides of the Wildcat lot to give that lot a little bit more of a sort of a tapered look, a little squarer that would allow us to park a little, cars in that location there. By trimming up and cleaning up those spots, it enables us to get to that target of 220 cars that we've set as the goal to try to offset. So that's in summary what the proposal is, and we have completed NEPA work in all of those locations to determine if there were wetlands or species or cultural resources. All of that has been done, and that's all ready to move forward with the Forest Service. Questions?
Thank you for that comprehensive presentation, Mike. Could you tell us how many parking spots you've added above Albion, and then also with the summertime lot that was developed in the basin?
Oh, let's see here. I'll try. I don't have those numbers at my fingertips. I can get them to you later. I think up in the Bend parking lot that we called up by Secret Lake, I think it was like 14 to 15 cars, could be a little bit more than that, parking spots that are there. In the Albion expansion, I think it was up to 100 car, or 100, a little bit more over 100 cars to replace parking that had been lost for public transportation improvements over the years.
Mike, I had a question about the accuracy of those numbers, because as far as I know, almost everybody in Grizzly Gulch is a resort patron, and there are people in the basin that are resort patrons as well, even if we do also use the backcountry. So I question whether really there are 200 non-resort cars that are parked there. You've also had a lot of expansion in the last 20 years of Watsons and Alf's, and also Albion Grill. How many more employees are parking up there, both of the resort itself and other businesses? And then the final question, which is really kind of the capstone, since we see an ever increasing number of cars coming up in the canyon, we have an increased population in the valley, and projected to continue and desired to continue according to the state government. After those additional 200 are filled up, then what? Is your plan just that at that point we'll have we won't need a stopgap anymore? We have the new transportation hub in place, and so we don't need more, or what's your thought about that?
Thank you. I'll try to address those. So the first, the ski area patron question is, when we talk about ski area patrons, the forest, we've had these discussions with the Forest Service, it is acceptable for the ski area to say that this lot is available for people that are skiing in the ski area this day. It's not a holder of a season pass. It's someone that is using the ski area that day. So that's how we have looked at that and done that evaluation that is there. In regards to, yes, we do look at this as really being a stop gap. There's really, when we looked at all the places of where we could maybe clean up and fix and adjust some of the parking, we kind of feel like that these places that have been presented are probably the only places we can go, particularly because we have a lot of other places that would impact wetlands or others if we tried to go there. So yes, that's kind of why I said it's a short-term solution. This is something that we're hoping there will be a transportation solution down the road that enables this to really just be the stopgap to get us to that point in time. And then, you know, we hopefully maybe even we can reduce the amount that's used for parking depending on what the transportation solution is or may be. Did I miss anything that you need answered, Margaret?
Well, since typically I ski every day, I don't know if my car is included in that or not. And as far as I know, there are also ALF's employees parking in Grizzly. I've seen in the Grizzly Gulch parking area, and I know that there are a lot of resort employees who are driving up and down the canyon. I don't know where they're all parking, whether it's in the permit area or if they're in reserved parking that only employees park. But I guess I just wonder how thorough this analysis was, that it's 200 or 220 cars that are being used by skiers that are not skiing in the resort that particular day.
I can, yeah, thank you. So this initially was based on, I think it's 6 days, and only the 6 days when we turned around traffic and sent it back down the canyon. Because we've kind of taken the position is if we have the parking available and it's not needed for the ski area, it wasn't an issue. But it became the days during the last 2 seasons when we turned cars away. And on those days, they were typically days where we had snow the night before. We were able to go up and count cars before 8 a.m. and got over 200 cars on those days before 8 in the morning. Cars continued to come in for the backcountry use all day long, in and out, as they do most days. We believe that number is higher, but 200 is probably is a good target number for us to shoot for. We're also in the process of actually, probably within the next few weeks, we will sign a contract with a company that does big data analysis, and they'll be able to show us. They did an initial teaser for us, which I just got the results yesterday, and they said in 2019, the month of January, the average number of cars parked that went into the backcountry were 200. So we will have more data that we'll be able to support that going forward. I don't anticipate that being an issue to be able to establish that. We've also looked at the number of backcountry people that go through the trail counters that we have placed at the 3 trailheads in the town of Alta. That number comes out to 50,000 users over 3 months, I believe, last year. And just doing the math, average number of people riding a car by that, you easily get over 200 cars also. So it's fairly evident that there is significant use. To get an accurate number, yeah, we'd have to shut it down to get it. And we believe there's adequate data to support this request. The Forest Service has acknowledged it. We think this is an appropriate way to go about it and minimize the impact upon what's happening now, rather than trying to restrict when we need to restrict. It just is very problematic and challenging to figure out, well, how would you do that for everybody in that process?
Any other comments or questions?
I was just going to comment that I think, looking at the Grizzly lot parking in the summertime when the fee booth is there and you're having different lanes of cars line up that have a parking pad or a permit to go up into the summer road, and so it gets really congested in that area in the summertime. So I like the idea of widening that parking lot a little bit just to also accommodate for the summer booth. We're not just talking winter here. I think we're having a lot more usage in town in general. in the summertime. And then this parking area between the Rustler and the Alta Lodge, I think is a great addition to our community center, because I envision that community center as a possible information center, bathrooms, trailhead, possibly for backcountry skiers and summer people. Like sometimes I envision there could be some information there about our wetlands and protection of our forests. And so it's a great area to, I think, increase parking and get people to go and enjoy our community center and get some more info.
Okay. Sheridan, were you about to say something else? Looks like.
I just wonder if we really want to change the character of Alta from being about mountains, skiing, and the environment to being more and more parking. I feel like we've already jumped the shark on this. And if we keep increasing the capacity for cars, I think we're going to destroy this place that is the draw in the first place.
I understand your concern, Sheridan, but the challenge would be is if we don't, we have to start shutting it down. And where, there's just, if the town doesn't want to support this, we're going to indicate we were willing to do this, and then the town can deal with all of the backcountry enthusiasts and stuff.
Okay, so I think that we don't have an item on our agenda to take any action or to make a decision here today. So I think that there's going to have to be some additional conversation amongst the town council members. I've expressed some of the similar thoughts as I've heard from you all today, actually, in conversations with Mike. And does 200, one of my questions is, does 200 make a difference if there's essentially an infinite supply demand? Maybe 200 just adds 200 cars without really fixing a problem. I have some questions about the relationship with the Forest Service and the forest plan and the number of parking spots. There was a letter written this summer from the forest supervisor about that Mike, I understand that Mike doesn't think that it is the determinative situation now about his right to restrict parking. I had some similar concerns about who is a customer if you park at 7:30 and go for a few runs in Grizzly and then go into the ski area. So how do you know who was parked in those areas when you were getting that data? But Mike has said he's going to get better data. So anyway, I think we're going to have this conversation for a little while. What is the time frame for your Mike Morey? I just noticed you wanted to say something. Sorry.
Yeah, Mayor, I was wondering if you and the council might entertain staff comments in writing.
Yeah, I think we would definitely want to hear from you and the other members of the staff. Absolutely.
We'll get that to you real soon.
I mean, and I have had a conversation with Mike that I'll just reflect in a general way that he has concerns about the way this is Mike Morey, that he has concerns about the status quo and it is problematic, and having some extra parking spots seems like a good idea in certain ways. So I think it's a complicated issue. What is the time frame here, Mike Mon?
We are ready to submit. We're just waiting for the town's approval.
Okay.
And then it would go through, if we had your support and submit to the Forest Service, then they still have, we will be submitting all the documentation they've required, but then they go through their NEPA review process, which may take some time to get that approved, find that final approval. And that will include also a scoping opportunity. So, we'd be looking for your support. And then when they come back out with their deal, there's another opportunity for the town or others to weigh in as part of the scoping process also.
That becomes a public process, I
Yeah,
presume.
yes, you are correct.
Right.
Just to clear
Well,
up.
you're not very audible, I'm afraid.
Can you hear me?
Make a comment in the chat.
Yeah.
Chat is not a part of the public record, so I actually discourage you guys from using the chat. I don't have a way of recording that, so please don't.
Okay.
May I ask a question, just a general question too, just to clarify my understanding? And I'm not sure who is the expert to weigh in on this, but aren't we really talking about the highway primarily? And isn't the highway owned by all of the citizens of Utah? Isn't it a UDOT property on Forest Service land? Just trying to understand the overlaying authorities with regard to where parking is happening and who really owns it.
I can make an attempt at that. UDOT just went through this summer's in the process of perfecting their right of way. All the areas that we are talking about are outside of UDOT's right of way and are under permit with the Forest Service in the ski area.
And I
There
could
are
maybe,
sections.
oh, go ahead, Mike.
There are sections of the highway that do fit into that criteria that Sheridan has talked about.
Yeah, and one of the issues that I've discussed with Mike is what happened with Mike Mon and Mike Maury is what happens when the ski area, for whatever reason, you can imagine various scenarios. What happens when there's more demand than goes into his parking lots is that it ends up in the quote unquote in the town. So that's an issue. Okay, I think we should wrap up this part of this conversation. Polly, you can hear me. If you go to your, it may help if you go to the mute, the little microphone at the bottom, and you click on the up arrow, you can get to the audio settings. And there is a place in there where you go to the microphone and you can change the input levels in the microphone, just in case that's part of the issue here.
Mayor, it sounds like Polly is calling in on a separate
Okay.
line, so you might just
Okay.
give her a second here.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mike. We'll be in touch. All
Thank
right.
you.
As I suspect that there isn't really a lot of time on the ranked choice voting, and certainly 3 minutes isn't enough. But let me just foreshadow this issue by saying, rather than having a runoff election, if there's more than two, a primary election, if there's more than two candidates, the procedure is it otherwise goes by the name of an instant runoff, and all of the people who are voting get to rank order the people who are running up to the number that they want to rank order, all of the acceptable ones, for example. It has some appealing aspects to it, but like other voting procedures, it can lead to some perverse outcomes. And I was going to demonstrate an example of two. One of those, that's technical word in economics, is an unintended consequence that's bad for people. And in one of the scenarios, somebody can actually be moved up in people's ranking and have less chance of actually winning the seat. And that doesn't make a lot of sense. And another problem is that people who don't rank everybody, if they may be not, their vote may not count at all. If you have A, B, C, D candidates and you only rank A and B, but through this system, C and D become the last two, you're no longer voting on the people who might win the election. And so there are a number of concerns. And I'm happy to try to write a memo about this and distribute it ahead of time. It's not a simple solution to problem. Elise, you just muted yourself. You were off mute.
I was just gonna say that, I mean, it seems like we keep talking about this. I mean, I'm not a big fan of it, so I don't know if there's any other council members that are, but part of me just wonders if we need to keep talking about this.
I'm happy not to keep talking about it. Cliff expressed some interest in hearing about it. I could talk to you, Cliff, one-on-one if you want. And I know there's some enthusiasm in the state for it, which is why it came up. And the reason it came up now is because we have an election coming up, a municipal election coming up in November, and we can implement this if we want. But I'm happy to drop the issue entirely now that I've looked into it. In any case, we're out of time on the work session today. Okay. How do we have Polly available?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay. Good. All right. So let's move on to the regular meeting, and I'll call that meeting to. Oh, we have a public hearing, actually, is the next item on our agenda. And the public hearing is required when you are amending the budget. So are there public, so we need a motion to open the public hearing that needs to be seconded and voted upon. And then we have the public hearing, and then we have to close the public hearing and move into the regular town council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of opening the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that was unanimous. Okay, we are now in a public hearing. Jen, I'm guessing you're controlling if there is anybody who would like to contribute their opinion.
Possibly. Is there a time limit just to make folks aware of in a public hearing?
Yeah, we allocated 15 minutes until 4:15 for the public hearing.
Okay, I just was gonna pay attention to that. I'm gonna check in with one person, and then if anybody else in the attendee group would like to speak, just raise your hand. Karen Travis, I said I would check in with you. I've given you permission to speak. Would you like to make a comment?
Not at this time. I will on citizens' input.
Okay, thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Karen.
And I didn't hear from anybody else. Mike, did you want to make any public comment, Mike Mon? I just gave you permission to talk, Mike.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
No, am
Okay.
I on the agenda for later, the council meeting, or just?
You are. I just wanted to check with you if you wanted to make a comment in the public hearing.
No, I'm good.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
And then I just have one more person I'm going to check with.
Sure.
Tara, did you want to make Tara Tannehill with Friends of Alta, did you want to make a public comment at this time, or was that later?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
no.
All right. Well, so we built in an extra 15 minutes in this town council meeting to accommodate the public hearing, but we were predicting that we wouldn't have a 15-minute long public hearing as well. So it looks like we don't need to do that. So I'll just give people one more second to say their piece. Otherwise, I'll call for a motion to close the public hearing. Or how about if I make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second,
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say yes or aye. Aye.
yes,
Aye.
Aye.
Sheridan, I don't think I heard your response.
Sorry. Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the public hearing is closed and now we can go into the regular meeting. I've already read the declaration in the work session. That suffices, as I understand it. And the next item on then the next item on our agenda is citizen input. And we already heard that Karen Travis would like to give some citizen input, and there may be others.
Correct. Karen, I have given you permission to speak.
Can you hear me?
We can, thank you. And if
Okay.
you can limit it to 3 minutes, that would be great. Thank you.
About 30 seconds. My comment is that the governor's proposed budget includes money for infrastructure improvements for rural areas specifically. Will you follow up on this and see if Alta qualifies? Because you've got a list of capital improvements that I would think would qualify.
It's a good idea, I think. Sometimes what is defined as rural is dependent on what county you're in, and that sometimes works against us, but that is certainly something to look into, Karen. Thank you.
And next we have, I believe that Tara, I've given you permission to speak now if you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, thank you. So we were going to make a comment, but we decided we are no longer going to make a comment at this moment in time. But thank you for your time.
Okay.
On this call is still affiliated with that organization. So
Okay.
And Steve Campbell wanted to make a public comment.
I think that's kind of where we're at with things. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, we'll just.
Did you say Thady Chappelle?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know where I came up with your last name. My apologies.
No worries.
Yes, you, Thady, I apologize.
Not a problem. I'm going to read this, so I've timed it and I make sure I stay within my time limit.
It might make more sense for Thady to speak when we talk about the CPACE program.
Connie,
I'm okay, whatever.
can't hear you.
Okay, well, let's do that then. Follow Polly's.
No problem.
Okay, I don't know. I think that was Tara's phone. Yeah, thanks, Tara. Okay. So the next item. So that's it, right? Jen, are there any written? Did we receive written comments?
Not that I'm aware of, Piper.
Okay. No, she just.
No, we did not.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, so let me move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the audit of our 2020 financial statement. So Piper, you want to take that away, or just should I ask?
I'll just take the opportunity to introduce Ron Stewart of Gilbert and Stewart CPAs. I don't. What's the name? Yeah. Okay. And Ron will take it and report to the council on his findings.
Great. Well, good to meet all of you. Thanks for letting us be a part of your town. Like she said, my name is Ron Stewart. I'm a partner with Gilbert and Stewart CPAs here in Provo. We did the audit for 2020. What I would like to do is just take a couple minutes and talk to you about what we do as auditors and kind of what our job is, what we did to come to the conclusions and what those conclusions were. So there's really three things we look at when we do an audit of a city. One is to make sure that the financial statements that you have in front of you are materially correct and you can rely on those numbers. Two is to make sure that the internal controls are designed, implemented, and working effectively. And then three, that the state compliance that we're following state law. So I'll just take a couple of minutes and talk through each one of those and kind of tell you how we came to those conclusions. So as far as the financial statements being materially correct, we take a look at the trial balance and then we perform a number of tests on those balances and numbers to make sure that they're materially correct. So the best way that you can confirm or to verify that a number is right is to confirm it with an outside party. So we send confirmations to banks for the cash. We send confirmations to agencies for our accounts receivable with the state, with other governments. We send confirmations for debt to verify that the amount of debt that we have matches what they're showing is outstanding with what is owed to them. That helps us get a good sense of, that our cash balances are correct, that our debt is correct, and that the receivables of what people are going to pay us is correct, and we know what's coming in. In addition to that, we pull a significant number of invoices At the beginning of the audit, we'll pull just a random sample of invoices. We'll do those to make sure that the check matches the invoice, that it's coded in the proper period, that it's coded in the right place. And that also gives us just a good sense of where the city or the town is going. In addition to that, we'll pull invoices for capital asset purchases. And then we pull a number of invoices after the end of the year. So we'll pull some invoices after that period to make sure that they were recorded either in 2021 or 2020's fiscal year, make sure those are right. In addition to that, there's certain calculations that are made on the financial statements, depreciation, pension liabilities, payroll accruals, those kind of things where we've made some calculations, and we'll look at those numbers and recalculate those to make sure that what we've seen on the financial statements is what we believe to be right. In addition to that, we do what's called analytical reviews. So we'll take a look at last year and the year before, and we'll compare those to this year and see trends in what's happening. We do that at the beginning of the audit. That kind of helps us to design our tests and figure out where we want to go and look at. We do that as we're testing the balances. We'll do a comparison to say, did anything change? Was there a big variance there? And then at the end of the audit, we do it again, just to make sure, did we miss anything? Did we catch everything? So that gives us a good sense that the financial statements are materially correct. Through all those tests and other tests that we perform, we come to our conclusions. So if you look at our audit report, on the first page of the last paragraph, it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the town of Alta as of June 30, 2020, and the respective changes in financial position and cash flows where applicable thereof for the year ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So that is considered an unmodified opinion, a clean opinion, or the best opinion that you can receive. So what that means is we feel confident, and we're giving the opinion that the financial statements you have in front of you, that you can rely that that's really what happened throughout the year, and those numbers are accurate. The second part that we do is to look at internal controls. Now, why we don't necessarily give an opinion on controls, if there's something that comes to our attention that is just a part of the city or the town that's not working, or there's a control that maybe is designed properly and it's implemented, but we're just not following it as well, we would report that to you and let you know what those situations were. We do that, come to that conclusion through several different tests as well. We do that through interviews, we do that through observations and walkthroughs. So we sit down with Piper and say, tell us how things work. How does it go from point A to point B? And we go through those controls. And then we will actually take invoices and kind of walk it through that process to see, does it follow all of those procedures to get to the financial statements? And is that being followed? And that's how we come to our conclusions there. Like I said, we don't necessarily give an opinion on internal controls, but if there are things that come to our attention, we would let you know. And through our testing, through our walkthroughs and observations, we didn't find there was anything that came to the level of a significant efficiency or material weakness. So I know that there have been, in the past, there's been a couple of issues, and I think those issues have been addressed. I think having an outside CPA firm help with the reconciliations and the monthly, go through those things has been a great help. And I think also just the awareness of the segregation of duties and trying to be cognizant of moving those functions around so that not one person is doing everything, in our opinion, satisfies those conclusions that you're in compliance.
We appreciate that result, and I want to just commend the staff and Piper in particular for the hard work over the last few years in making sure that we ended up in this place.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mayor. I want to do a shout out to Jen too, because she's definitely a big part of it. So, and actually the other two guys in the office who are not really clerical workers have stepped up to take on some of that responsibility too.
Right, because we did have this problem of the same people doing too many different things. And so that created additional duties for some of the other staff members indeed. I also want to thank you that, you know, we were excited with your response to the RFP, and we are happy to see this result. And the combination of using, we had hoped that using an outside consultant on some of our routine accounting issues would, in the long run or in the medium run, save us some money on the audit. And this year is when we seem to have accomplished that. So thank you for your help with that. And then just one question for you. You were talking about the kind of the comparison between years as a way to flag problems, right? Because if revenues go way down or something like that, there may be an issue. The town of Alta, as you know, is highly reliant on sales tax, and sales tax is highly dependent on our ski season. So I was just curious, do you see more volatility in a town like ours than you do in a typical municipality?
I didn't necessarily see it. An interesting thing is that a lot of cities and towns were going through that process of, you know, with COVID and everything else, anticipating that there would be a sharp decline in the amount of sales tax that came in, when in reality, everybody stayed home and bought stuff, right? So it actually increased it. So while we were looking, we didn't necessarily see that big fluctuation. I think there's always going to be a little, but didn't see anything that was alarming as far as fluctuation.
I was joking with the mayor of Mill Creek that we wouldn't mind having some of his grocery stores in his liquor store.
Right. Yeah. Well, just pray for snow, and then it'll all be good for you guys, right? All right. So the last thing that we do as auditors is we want to make sure that you're in compliance with state law. So the state auditor's office gives us certain procedures that we need to follow. Some of those are an annual, once every 3 years, and once every 5-year basis. And so every 5 years, you should have gone through and been tested on each one of those procedures. So what we looked at this year for your town, sorry, let me get back to that real quick. So the procedures we looked at this year were budgetary compliance, fund balance, fraud risk assessment, restricted taxes and related revenues, Open and Public Meetings Act, treasurer's bond, and cash management. And so the state basically says, we want you to look at these particular things and do these procedures and tell us if they're in compliance or not. So as we went through and did those procedures, we found there were a couple of areas that we were not in compliance with. The first one is the fund balance. So the state basically says that you can keep in your general fund up to 75% of your revenues for the next year, right? And we exceeded that by $253,000. So we've got too much money sitting in the general fund that we need to move. And the recommendation is that we move that from the general fund to the capital projects fund with an idea of how we're going to spend that in the future in a project or something that we're going to do to improve the town. And then just to monitor that as we go throughout the year to make sure that at the end of the year we're in compliance and that 75%. The second one is the fraud risk assessment. So this was something that came out that was just new this year. State auditor said, we want you basically to evaluate yourselves on where you come in on your risk of fraud. And so there was a form that they sent out that you guys, I'm sure, have talked about and are aware of, that kind of rated yourself on your fraud risk assessment. So that was supposed to have been completed by June 30th and then submitted to the state auditor by December 31st. And we are aware that that was not completed by 31st or by June, but I think has been sent in now. Piper, is that right?
Yes, it has been submitted to the state before
right,
December 31st.
So we met that requirement. We just didn't meet the June requirement, and that's why it's a finding. So, but that's going to be, you know, it's a one-time thing. We turned it in. We're in compliance. I don't see that that's going to be anything going forward. The state auditor is, you know, they're going to be evaluating this, not necessarily to come out and say, you know, what was your score, but they may come back and say, you gave your score this, show us how you came to that conclusion. And so it's probably something we need to continue to talk about and evaluate and see how we can improve on those. But those are the two findings that we had for this year. If there's any questions anybody has on the financial statements or anything else, I'd be more than happy to answer.
I had a couple of questions. Sorry, I don't know if I'm interrupting somebody else. But there was something in the financial statement about the fact that there is a difference between a government versus a business type activity. And the question is related to that, is there a standard for determining which category things go into? As I read the explanation, it suggested that in the business activity, that was how things were paid for, was specifically from that fund, and the water and sewer was listed. But we have other things that we do, and I wasn't sure. In one in particular, the energy sales and use tax wasn't listed in either. It's only 70K. But there was a question of, should it be in one or the other, or how are things done, because it wasn't an intergovernmental transfer. So maybe too much of a question, I don't know.
No, perfect question. So to determine between a business type activity and a governmental activity is correct. What you were saying is that if the revenues that are being generated are treated like if you had in the water fund, you're charging your citizens for water, and it's based on their usage of that water. And so when you have a situation where your revenues are driven by the usage of the product that you're providing, that's treated as an enterprise fund or a business type activity. The same thing with the sewer. How much sewer is being used, there's a fee that's being charged to each citizen based on that. The governmental revenues, there are certain things that happen, like there's charges for services, in cities that have recreation departments, there's, charges for, playing basketball and those kind of things that we charge the citizens, but it in no way is able to generate enough revenue to sustain itself, right? And so it's supported mostly by the infrastructure, the taxes that are generated within the city. The energy and use tax that you're referring to is treated as one of those intergovernmental revenues. And it is, if you look at the fund statements, it would show up as a tax. So it would be under the sales and use tax because it's coming from the state tax commission based on that. So, and it's not driven to try and create a profit. It's not driven to sustain itself. It's driven to bring in revenues to the city so the city can maintain a large variety of different things, meaning the roads, the buildings of the city, and those kind of things, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. Is there anything related to an energy assessment?
I have not heard of anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
So most of it is just driven by the taxes, the use tax that comes in.
Okay, thanks, Margaret. Any other comments? No. Okay. All right. So do we need? So what action is there to take here? Let's see. Is there any action?
I would ask and take a vote whether or not the town council would accept the audit, but there's not a resolution on accepting it.
Okay. So I'd invite a motion to accept the audit as submitted.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. We look forward to next year.
Great. Well, just a shout out to Piper and her staff. They do a great job. We throw a lot at them kind of quick, and they do a great job of responding and give us information we need. So I think you guys are in good hands. Thank you.
We agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.
Okay, you too. Okay, good. So one of the advantages of using Zoom for meetings, I guess, is that you don't have to drive around to all of your clients when they do their audit reports. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Alpha Ski Area update from Mike Mon, who is back in the main meeting. Well, where are you, Mike? There you are.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Just a minute here. Okay. Thank you. Well, we've been open for 49 days. We're a third of the way through this winter season. I want to express thanks first to Mike Morey and his team, who've been very helpful as we've dealt with the traffic of, having this COVID system where you got reservations at Snowbird and limited parking in the town of Alton, as we've tried to manage the crowds to match the demand on the mountain. A few surprises we've seen this year are, we anticipated our number one bottleneck would be our indoor spaces in our restaurants, that we would run out of room. That has not been the case. About 10 to 13% of the people that come on a daily basis choose to go inside to the restaurant. So many days we never fill the tables. Weekends and holidays, we may have a line at some of our F&B establishments. Pleased to report we've had no known outbreaks of COVID anywhere within the ski area operations. We've had 19 employees test positive. All of those are resulting of, none of them are living employees, all of them are live out employees, and almost every one of those that were traced was contact in the valley with someone they were living with, family, or an event they went to in the valley. We've had 72 employees that we've quarantined in the last few months for either direct contact or having a symptom, and none of those 72 tested positive. We've had 4 days that we completely filled our parking, and with Mike Morey's help, his team's help, we turned around cars at the bypass. One day we turned around cars for 4 hours and probably had 300-400 cars that we turned around. That a lot of people wanted to come. There just was not there's, like it's been pointed out, there is more demand than we have capability to accommodate. We had another 8 to 10 days where our parking got full, but there was just enough, left within the town areas of parking and enough turnover that we didn't have to turn anyone away. And so that was a good balance on those days for us. Snowfall wise, it's pretty dry. We're at 70% of our normal snowfall. We have a 41-inch base, and the long-term forecast doesn't show anything significant in the short term. We are skiing, primarily most of our skiing is happening on man-made snow. We've blown through our allotment of water with the Salt Lake City Water, requested and received approval to use more water. You may have noticed that we had Supreme down early last week for a couple of days because we don't have man-made snow on the Supreme left, and we had started to get through to the rock with our grooming equipment, and so we pulled off equipment, shut the lift down. Unfortunately, we had that storm last week that gave us just enough snow to bring Supreme back online. It's holding up pretty well right now, but we may lose it again before we get enough. If we don't get another storm soon, we may have to take it back offline. We're hoping to get through this upcoming holiday period with it online this coming weekend, so that we can accommodate the people that are coming. In regards to snowmaking, we recently updated our snowmaking master plan at the request of Salt Lake City Water. We had requested an increase in our water contract to make sure we had water before we went into Supreme area with some snowmaking improvements. So we updated the master plan. That is the Forest Service and the Salt Lake City Water has a copy of that master plan. Would the town of Alta like a copy of our snowmaking master plan update? Okay, I will get you a copy. In summary, the plan, snowmaking is based upon temperatures, of course, having enough water flow when you need it, and having enough snowmaking infrastructure. We have enough water and infrastructure to make snowmaking enough for groomed runs off of Wildcat, Collins, Sugarloaf, Sunnyside, the toes, and across the bottom. We do not have enough water or flow to do snowmaking in the Supreme area. So our master plan includes expansion of snowmaking infrastructure into the Supreme area, more water, and then we need to have some additional reservoiring so that when you have the cold temperatures, you can efficiently use your snowmaking system to make snow. So our plan includes an additional 10 million gallon open reservoir somewhere and a 1 million gallon underground reservoir for snowmaking. So we'll send you a copy of that. It doesn't have all the details because we still need to work with Salt Lake City Water on the reservoiring side and flow side of things, and also getting a commitment from them that there would be additional surplus of water available if we do develop infrastructure into the Supreme area for snowmaking.
I know, Mike, that Laura told me that they approved Snowbird's request for additional water recently. But that's not ongoing, I understand.
Right. And she approved additional 10 million gallons for us for this season.
Oh, good.
Also,
good.
So we have additional water for this season. We've actually put a lot of that back into Secret Lake. It's ready to go if we need to use it. We used some a couple nights ago. We made some snow. And so we anticipate if we get the temperatures, it's not, we don't have the temperatures for the next few nights, but if we get the temperatures again, we may fire some of that up. We have moved, the snowmaking equipment we have here is really just our permanent guns. Most of all of our temporary guns we've moved off site now. Not temporary, the movable guns, so that are there. So that's kind of where we're at. We did, from a skier visitation standpoint, the holidays were about 80% of the visitation we saw last year. So we were down about 20% for skier visits. We've noticed that, what played into that a little bit was because we anticipated more. That the restaurants would be the bottleneck. We initially started the season parking our cars. You may have noticed this a lot farther apart as we got into the holiday period, and we found that we weren't having a bottleneck in the restaurants. And then the lodging, the number of lodge guests was far below our expectation. Just a minute here. It was far below our expectation, and we began to park cars a little closer together to bring those numbers up and try to balance that. And that's an ongoing balancing exercise that we're going through. I think we've gotten a little better at it, but things that are impacting. It's interesting that we're also watching things like the reservation level at Snowbird and the reservation levels at Park City. And when those days are when the reservations there's none available, we have seen a little bit of a surge of people coming to Alta on some of those days too. So we've had to be preparing for that. We're trying to take all those factors into consideration as we determine how many cars that we're going to park on a given day. But it's, you may have all noticed it's changed the pattern in the canyon. There's this rush, much more traffic early morning on busy days coming to Alta. Snowbird's traffic is arriving at a more leisurely pace because they know they have a reservation so they don't get caught up in the fray. And I think Solitude, Alta, and Snowbird intend to kind of get together at the end of this season and talk about how each respective system worked, and see if there's something in the future that's what we learned for the future from this. But I think that's the question I do have for the town is, what are the next steps on the zoning language changes, or what should be the next thing that we should expect to see?
John, you want to answer that question?
Well, I think we had it might not have seemed like it, but we had a pretty productive work session. We've narrowed it down to, in my mind, we've narrowed it down to everyone's favorite paragraph. We have not come to any conclusion on, and that paragraph, Mike, as you know, are what could be possibly exempted for the ski area, commercial ski area, and picnic operations in the proposed Upper Albion Basin Protection Overlay Zone. We continue to hash around what could possibly be exempted and what procedures would be followed. So we're not there yet. We're still talking about it, and we'll keep you in the loop. We're going to talk about it again next month. We'll probably have a work session.
Okay. And we are more than interested in providing input and feedback at any time that you need that.
Okay, very good.
The work session last week, we judged to be too close to today's meeting to really make much more progress, and so we'll take it up for the next meeting.
Any questions you have for the ski area?
Thanks for that presentation. Have any of your employees been vaccinated?
Yes, the ski patrol has all had their first shot. So across the ski industry, actually in Utah, the ski patrol, because they were considered first responders, have all had I think it was last week or the week before, they received a vaccination. But we don't anticipate any other vaccination of employees at this point in time until they get to their respective age group or whatever.
I had a question. This summer, it looked like there was staking along the south side of Grizzly Gulch, just right by those power lines where the cat crew goes up for the cat skiing. And it looked like that was maybe for a tank for the ski area. Can you tell us any more about that?
Yes. So as you know, the Schrantz estate continues to try to move forward their development plans. One of the issues that they have run into was that they do not have sufficient water storage for fire suppression. And so they need to have a water tank. We received notice from them sometime last summer. They tried to do a eminent domain. They gave us 30 days notice that they were going to issue eminent domain and try to take away property for a tank up there. And we met with them, had a series of discussions with them, agreed that we would explore the tank site location if with them, as long as they would remove their eminent domain clause. They did that. We had Aquatech, I think it was the firm that came in late in the fall and went up and surveyed the site up there on the bench above the, I think it's primarily above more above the Schrantz home. That has always been designated as a potential water tank site. And so they went up and did some of the work to determine if that site was suitable, the engineering work, the geotech work, to see if the site was suitable to have a water tank. That work was completed, and I think that staking was associated with that. There has been no other movement forward in regards to the estate or that. We're trying to not get in a battle with them over eminent domain, but we have not given them the right to go in there and put a tank there at this point in time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is Jay Torgerson with the UFA Chief.
Good afternoon. Happy New Year. So UFA is
Yeah, Jay, you're muted.
there we go. I thought that I unmuted. I apologize. Happy New Year. UFA is still dealing with COVID, as everybody is. So our positive numbers since this started, we've had 84 employees test positive. Many more than that have had to isolate, either because they've had family members that have been affected or have been exposed significantly so that they've had to be quarantined. But up until now, we have been able to staff appropriately. We haven't had to run short anywhere. We do have plans in place to take care of shortages as needed. We have a mandatory staffing callback type list set up. They've asked those of us that work in day positions to be available and help out. So consequently, I'll be working at 113 this Friday. So maybe I'll see y'all in the canyon. I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I just may never come back.
When was the last time you worked in the station?
I actually worked in December. I was at the station up in Immigration Canyon. So we've been trying to all pitch in and help out. So I'm lucky enough. I am able to choose where I work, and so I'll choose the Canyon stations. We have also started our vaccination process. We're lucky that we're one of those groups that were able to get it early. So all of our employees have had the opportunity to at least get their first vaccination. We haven't made it mandatory, but it's been really interesting. Most of our people, as you would suspect, have chosen to get it. We're somewhere between the 80 to 90% of employees that are choosing to get vaccinated. I think we've done a really good job of promoting it, answering questions, providing information so that people are able to make good decisions. So I am really hopeful that here in the next couple months with opportunities for vaccinations going to everybody, that we'll be in a different place as we near summertime. I'm crossing my fingers that that's the case. We are getting ready to start a new recruit camp. 36 new people will be starting their recruit camp in February. That will be a challenge to have 36 people going through training and keeping them healthy and keeping the instructors healthy. So we have plans in place to be able to do that. We're crossing our fingers that we can do that and have 36 new people ready to.
Jay, you just muted yourself again.
Dang it, sorry.
There you go.
Did you hear about our recruit camp? 36 people.
Yeah, it was
All
right
right.
after that. Yeah.
Sounds good. Call volume for the town of Alta. So these are fourth quarter call volume numbers. Total number of 23 calls, 4 of those being fire calls, 17 are medical calls, 1 hazmat call, and 1 good intent call. That's all that I have written down. Any questions for me? Awesome. There was just one more thing. So as we are in the winter season, we have a new ops chief, and he's been trying to emphasize the importance of having service around the clock in the canyon. So that means that if 113 goes down on a patient transport, that his battalion chiefs are paying attention to that, and they're backfilling the station or having another crew come in so that they can take the next call. They don't have to wait for that crew to return from the hospital. So the battalion chiefs are paying attention to when the crew is going down, so that they can send another crew up to take their place. We did start with a new CAD system here in the Valley, and the CAD system is set up to send the closest response to an emergency. That works really well for the most part here in the Valley, but it provides some challenges with the canyon if 113 is out. So they may send a unit just based on where they're located. So all of our vehicles now have an AVL system, so an automatic vehicle locator, so that they know exactly where they are, and they would send the closest vehicle to the canyon to a call. So that may not mean that it's four-wheel drive, and so that's something that we're also paying attention to on those days where that may be needed. The battalion chief will insert themselves and reroute the next appropriate closest crew to that call. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks. I guess that means you better not steal a fire truck.
That's right.
Or, by the way, a Penske truck. Rental trucks turn out to have GPS in them too. We had an incident like that this year, actually, up in Alta. Okay, thank you, Jay. Were there any questions for UFA? I didn't see anybody looking to speak. Okay. All right. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda that includes the December 9th, 2020 minutes. I guess we don't have the minutes from the last work session yet. The treasurer's report and the staff report.
I move that we approve the consent agenda items.
Okay. Thank you, Margaret. Is there a second? I'll second it. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Cliff, was that a yes?
Aye.
For you? Okay. All right, so it's unanimous. Thank you. All right, questions for the staff on the departmental reports?
I had a question related to John's email that he sent us recently. I guess not technically a staff report, but about that zoning issue that he was just mentioning. In terms of those 11 items that are remaining, is there any idea whether or not any of them received a majority or versus unanimous, or you just tabulated that there was any sort of question or concern?
You cut out at the end, but I'm assuming you asked if there was, the way I tabulated it is if someone had a question or a comment, it didn't have to be unanimous. So those 11 are just 11 items that someone had a question or wanted more discussion on. Not everyone, but just someone.
Okay, good. Anything else? Okay. No. All right. The next item is on the agenda is my mayor's report. So let me get started with that. As you probably all know, although I was getting ready for this meeting when I saw the news a few hours ago now, President Trump was impeached for the second time with a vote of 232 to 197, the majority including 10 Republicans this time. I just want to say that I hope no one from our community was involved in the crimes at the US Capitol on January 6th that were kind of the precipitating event for this impeachment. And I also hope that none of our community members would be involved in crimes during the next week as we come to the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as president and vice president. There is quite a bit of talk that there will be disruption. So I'll just put it out there that I hope that that won't reflect our community. As an elected official, I feel a great responsibility to respect the outcome of our elections, whether the outcomes match my own preferences or not. And I suspect I am speaking for all of us when I say that. We recently lost two people who had deep ties to Alta, Elfriede Shane, passed away on December 3rd, and it just skipped my attention in the December meeting, but some of you probably knew about this. She and her husband Jim constructed and opened the Gold Miner's Daughter in the 1962-63 ski season. After Jim passed in 1998, she operated the lodge for 2 years, and then she retired. I bought my condo in Alta in 2004, so it was after she retired, but I did have the opportunity to meet with her a couple of times, and she was a lovely lady. She loved her job at the GMD and cherished the memories of the many guests and employees that were part of her life for those 40 years. The second person was Lois Swick, who passed away on December 21st in Exeter, New Hampshire at the age of 95. She was a microbiologist and married George Swick, raised a family of 3 girls in New Jersey. She loved to ski and did so into her 90s, spending her winters in Alta for 30 years, most recently in the unit of the Hellgate condominiums. So our condolences to their families and friends. COVID, as Jay Torgerson said, is a continuing issue, of course. We continue to operate our office with 1 staff member at a time without walk-in visitors, and happily, that seems to be working well. I continue to attend the Salt Lake County Mayor's COVID and other emergency briefings on Fridays. Those have gotten shorter because I guess, unfortunately, they've become more routine. Case rate in the past 14 days is 1,152 per 100,000 in Salt Lake County, which counts in the very high range, according to the governor's office. We had 2,893 new cases statewide yesterday. In the county briefing on Friday last week, Gary Edwards, the executive director of the Salt Lake County Health Department, said that we had been seeing a fairly large surge that he attributed to Christmas visitation and travel. I don't think by now, maybe we're seeing some of the New Year's too, as well. Some of you know this, I've told some of you this, but I'll say it in public here, that COVID came to my own family. My partner Kate's stepfather died of COVID with underlying comorbidities. He was tested positive on December 14th and died on December 28th. And Kate went to the funeral and now is quarantining for a week, and we'll have a PCR test this coming weekend. And with any luck, we'll be negative after having traveled to Phoenix to go to the funeral. The Alta Clinic and the town of Alta have required a small number of rapid antigen tests so that we can perform those tests locally. I'll point out, I had a conversation with the Salt Lake County Health Department that test results are supposed to go to the county health department, which is why they want the tests to be conducted in test centers and not by individuals. Sooner or later, COVID rapid tests may be like pregnancy tests, where you can, get the result in your privacy of your own home and not have to discuss it with anybody. But that's not legally the case now. I don't know how many cases we've had in Alta, because that information is only voluntarily transmitted to the town. It is useful for us to know because we can involve, well, for a couple of reasons. One is we can involve the health department when we need to, but we can also let our police, the marshal and the fire services know how to protect themselves or when they need to be especially vigilant. I do know that the county website dashboard is underreporting Alta as continuing to have fewer than 10 cases, and that does not seem to be true. I think that part of the reason is that there may be a little confusion about is a case an Alta case or a Valley case, depending on where somebody lives and works, or that's possible. And the other attribution seems to be that, if we have a seasonal employee who has a driver's license from some other location, maybe that's being reported as a case that's related to that other location rather than in Alta. As Mike said, in response to Sheridan's question, the ski patrol were treated as first responders, and they, which I asked for and seems to have been implemented, I think statewide, actually. I know it's been true in Park City as well. So it's not just Salt Lake County. But the ski patrol, the marshal's office, UFA, as you heard, are being vaccinated. Okay, in terms of specific activities, there was a council of mayors meeting on December 10th, and it focused on the upcoming legislative session. The big issue for us that we were given a heads up by Cameron Deal of the Utah League of Cities and Towns was that the state seems interested in taking over aspects of municipalities' land use authority, one of our favorite topics. And so there is a House Bill 98 that I just learned about a week ago from our lobbyist, which, for example, allows for independent building inspectors and opting out of plan review requirements under certain conditions, which strikes me as a really bad idea in the town of Alta, given the unique circumstances of snow. And I mean, if just to take one example, the covers on the gas meters, right? I mean, that's important up here and less important in some other places. So we're going to oppose that. On December 14th, there was a Central Wasatch Commission retreat where we focused on our goals for what we're going to do about the mountain transportation study, the NCRA legislation, and the visitor use study. All three of those are pretty high priorities at this point for the CWC. On December 15th, there was a UFA-UFSA meeting, but I forgot to go back and look at the minutes of that meeting. So I don't actually, I forgot to make myself a note about what the content was. And I have to admit that 3 weeks ago, I don't recall now. There was nothing out of the ordinary, I can tell you that. The tourism task, I sit on the state's tourism recovery task force, as you know, and it met on December 16th, and it focused on our goals there, which it's interesting. Having people feel safe coming to Utah was the way it was framed. And I tried to insert, and I think I was successful, that people should come to Utah and not just feel safe, but they should be safe. And I think that was a contribution to the language. Part of the issue with Utah and this tourism task force is pretty interesting, I think. We have fewer constraints on our ski area operations than a number of other Western states, like Colorado and California and New Mexico in particular. I haven't looked into Wyoming and Montana, but they may be less than those other three. But there was some pleasure in that, expressed in that tourism task force, that we're getting the customers that aren't going to those other states. And I think that's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's a good thing that we have customers, and as Mike Mon said, he's got 80% of his business as last year, which is a pretty happy result. On the other hand, we may be getting the people who are, to put it politely, have higher levels of risk tolerance. So I just hope that what we're not getting are the people who go to a party in San Diego and then hop on an airplane the next morning. Met with Salt Lake County on December 18th for the usual COVID briefing, but then I followed up with the health department on issues for Alta, including the ski patrol as first responders and getting those tests. Central Wasatch Commission Board meeting dealt with budget amendments and the Mountain Transportation System timeline. We're going to offer to UDOT and the public our preferred transportation option as a commission. And so I welcome your input as the town council members on that. All of the meetings are part of the Utah Open Meetings system, so you can read the minutes or you can listen to the recordings. As everybody here knows, we had a work session on zoning last week on the 5th. And then just yesterday we had a road meeting where the most interesting issue to come up in the road meeting was an issue that we have not yet had to deal with because we haven't had the snow. The expectation with the way we were planning to manage the highway and close the canyon at the mouth when Alta and Snowbird's parking was full is working out a little differently than we anticipated because Alta's parking is filling up even when Snowbird's is not. So they're less correlated than we anticipated. And what that has, the way that's been managed is Mike Morey and the other marshals have been turning people around at the top of the bypass road. So if they come up the main road, you can put them down the bypass road and vice versa. Well, that's worked pretty well, but we haven't had a snowy day where the main road was closed. And if we have the main road closed in those conditions, we will have, Mike, do you want to insert a word there? We'll have what kind of circumstance or what kind of situation?
I think my word might get bleeped out, but it will be a problem.
That's why I asked you to fill in the blank because I was
well, it's a hyphenated word that ends in show.
Yeah, okay. It won't be pretty is part of it. So Mike is on top of the issue, at least as an impending problem. Coming up on the 19th, the legislature begins. I have a UFSA meeting that morning. On the 21st, as part of the CWC's educating itself about the mountain transportation system issue, we are having a series of discussions about the specific alternatives: bus, rail, gondola. And so we have a bus, we're calling them education sessions. So we're having a bus educational session on January 21st. There's a budget finance committee from the CWC on the 22nd. On the February 1st, a CWC board meeting. February 9th is our next road meeting, and February 10th is a town council work session and meeting. Fairly long list of dogs. Bodhi Jam. We were talking about whether to read the dogs' names. I'm going to read one because it's cute. So Hugh Ferguson brought Biscuit to Alta for 3 days in December 27th. But Bodhi Jam had a temporary 30-day pass starting on the 13th of December. Kathy Moore, 8 days on the 19th. Mariana Abelson for 8 days on the 19th. Evan Unger, 3 days on the 20th. Sophie Danforth, 14 days on the 23rd. Justin Witkoff, 9 days on the 26th. Dan Monahan, 15 days on the 27th. David Schuss for Presley on the 27th, 14 days. Bruce Hotaling for 30 days on the 28th. Kevin McDonald, 6 days on the 28th. Kenzie Woods, 3 days on the 30th. Virginia Gowski, 30 days on the 31st. And James Laughlin for 8 days on the 6th. I think that the relatively high demand was because people were coming for Christmas. Okay.
Mayor, can I pose a question to you about your report? Related to the county website, your sense was that it was underreporting the number of COVID cases. Is there any ability for the county to actually share some data with Alta, keeping, of course, the privacy of the individual testing positive or otherwise confidential, but at least to let us know, as you say, so that our first responders know what they might be encountering?
I have pointed out this, what appears to me to be an error a couple of times, most recently last week again, because I was quite confident at that point because I had heard from 2 of the lodges about their situation that added up to more than 10. And they said that they would look into it. So part of the problem, I think, Margaret, is that I'm not sure they have good data, even prior to the question of will they share the data they have with us. So I don't, but I will inquire with our intergovernmental liaison what information they are allowed to share. I'm happy to do that.
And Margaret, if I could add, part of the problem is compounded by the fact that we share a zip code with Sandy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That was actually a goal I had. So like, I don't know. How long have we been doing COVID? For about 14 years or something, right? So it was sometime before COVID, I was going to look into this question of getting our own zip code because a couple of times Amazon told me to go to the Sandy post office. And I was like, I'm not going, that's why I'm buying from you, is to not go down there. So, but anyway, we do still have that zip code.
Mayor, I wonder if you've heard anything about potential funding for municipalities with the Biden-Harris administration coming into play. And then as a follow-up, I also wondered if you might speak to your knowledge of, I'm hearing around town, many people have the misconception that if they've been vaccinated, even with one vaccine, that they can't actually transmit COVID. And though I am no medical expert, it's not my understanding of the science. And I wonder if you could weigh in on that.
Okay. On the question of money, I have so far, I have my, the last bill that that was in Congress did not include revenue replacement for municipalities. And I don't know if the Biden-Harris administration will include that. They have said, as I think you, I bet you know, is they have said that there will be another round after this one. And I think that there is more appetite amongst the Democrats for helping municipalities. My understanding in a conversation with Senator Romney, who over some months ago when I brought this up, told me not to hold my breath because the Republican majority in the Senate would block that, although he was in favor of it, he told me, or at least was sympathetic, as was John Curtis, having been a mayor in Provo, as a matter of fact. So at least that part of our delegation was sympathetic. Senator Romney told me that the House, I mean, the Senate Republicans did not want to help bail out the oversubscribed and underfunded pension funds of the large American cities, and that was why they didn't want to do that, that they thought a lot of the democratically controlled large cities had been too profligate in their spending. And I tried to point out that there might be a way to designate resort communities. At least in Utah, there is a way to designate resort communities. And I've pointed that out at our tourism meetings also, because we're the ones, we and Park City and Moab and places like that are Eden maybe are the places that have been hit especially hard by sales tax decreases. So that's not a very comprehensive answer, Sharon, but I do have a contact actually who's related, who seems to be being consulted by the transition team, and he told me that there seems to be some sympathy for municipalities. What was the other question? It was about whether you can transmit COVID after you get vaccinated. My understanding is that the science on that is very unclear, and that you need the advice that that people are getting is to stay masked and distanced even after. It's not an ollie in free card. Or I just mixed my metaphors. It's not a get out of jail free card, from what I understand. Anything else? Okay. The next item on our agenda is discussion and possible action on a resolution extending 1990, I guess that's when it was put into practice, on an interlocal agreement, service agreement with Salt Lake County Service Area 3 to operate Alta's water system. And I can see that we I'm happy to see that we have Keith Hansen with us today. Keith, do you want to brief the town council on this issue, please?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Appreciate you taking the time. Let's see, it's been a little over 30 years that we've been operating the town of Alta's water system under contract. And yeah, someday when you're bored, we can talk about how things were before that. There might be a couple of people here who remember. But it's actually been a pretty good relationship for us. I think it's strengthened a number of things in the canyon. And the amazing thing to me is that how fast 2 years go by. So this is the standard resolution that we need to, from the 1990 agreement, just approve every 2 years. Next Tuesday, the Service Area 3 board will do the same thing. They will approve the resolution for the extension of the interlocal agreement for us to operate the system. Now, I don't know if you guys need any more input for this, for you guys to make a decision. I strongly encourage you to do it. I think it's good for the community, and I don't know how. Might be tough for you to find another way to do it for the costs involved. So if you want to discuss that, Mayor, amongst you, that's fine. I got a couple other minor water and sewer inputs for you, and that's it.
Well, I just want to say how much we appreciate your service to the town. There's no doubt that we would be in up a creek.
Well, I don't know about that, but and I appreciate that, and I'll be around for probably one more round of doing this interlocal agreement, and then it'll be somebody else's problem. No.
You're not looking for a 50th anniversary, another 20 years?
You never know. The way things go, the way 2020 has gone, you just never know, but I'm really optimistic about 2021.
Okay, so why don't I ask for a motion to accept resolution number 2021 R1 and get that before this body, and then we can have some discussion about it if we'd like.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Okay, moved and seconded by, I think, Council Member Davis and then Morgan. Any discussion?
And can I just, I don't know if this is the best time to jump in, but Keith, since we have you on, I reviewed this and yeah, interlocals can last for up to 50 years. So we are within the time limit, but I think it might make some sense to update this interlocal and maybe make it so that you don't need to do this every year. So I don't know if you, I can get with you offline, but I think it would be in both entities' advantage to do that. So maybe you could help me get in touch with the right person to facilitate that.
Yeah, I think that that's, you know, the main reason that we look at it every 2 years, Polly, and generally the reason being is the cost. You know, it's gone up a little bit. It hasn't gone up with this round, but oftentimes, and that may be something that could be put into the interlocal, that there's, you know, some kind of an agreement about what the monthly fee would be, and then the above 40 hours per month rate. So
it's this paragraph here that is really the reason for the 2-year cycle, I guess.
yes.
Maybe there's a way to have a fee schedule referred to that. Maybe just the fee schedule gets adopted occasionally rather than the whole document. But I don't know. I'll let you think about that, Polly.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Okay, so I'm not hearing that this is going to be controversial. So why don't we call this question? All those in favor of adopting resolution 2021 R1, authorizing the extension and amendment to the interlocal service agreement between the town of Alta and Salt Lake County Service Area 3, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, that was unanimous, I think. And so we have adopted that resolution. Keith, you had more you wanted to say, though.
Just you know, to bring you guys up to speed, since I believe it was September or October when I was in front of you the last time, and we were in the middle of the changing the media.
Right.
Well, I'm getting phone calls in 3 different places, but they'll be fine. So the new, first of all, to review, we've got the Bureau of Reclamation grant, and maybe John has talked a little bit about that, and Margaret was, you know, super instrumental in making that happen. And then working with John and Piper, we've managed to take care of all of the tasks put in with the grant, with the exception of the gas line for heating at the Bay City Mine and for the generator at the Grizzly Pump Station. John did get an extension on the grant. It was supposed to be up by the end of the year. And so we will continue and get that stuff done here in the spring. The nice thing is the new pump is in with the variable frequency drive, the LED lights, the tunnel. We started up the system on the 24th of November and have been running it basically nonstop since then. The best part about it is it came in under budget. So we're pretty happy about that. We do still have to install the meter in the Buckhorn. And one of the things that I wanted to talk with you guys about is down here in the service area, as part in doing the research for getting the meter for the Alta thing, we have now instigated a new meter replacement and upgrading system in the service area using what is Badger Meters beacon system that actually will allow our customers to monitor their own usage online. We've just launched this. It's a cloud-based system that all the residents in in Alta that are within the service area will have access to their meters. We are actually going to put that the meter in the Buckhorn on that as well, just so that we can watch this. The nice thing about this system is it can notify you if there's a water leak, if they're using in a 24-hour period, if they're using an abnormal amount of water, or if they're not using water. There's a number of things, and I'm going to work with John and Piper about the one thing that I found from this is that it's amazingly affordable. And most of our meters are in the 30-year-old category, and so are most of the ones in the town of Alta. And so they're basically at the end of their useful life. And here at the service area, we've budgeted $20,000 into our 2021 budget to bring this system up. It'll be a 3-year process before we get all of our 190 meters into the system. But I do think the big thing is we can save money. And the nice thing is it also goes directly into our accounting software for billing. So it's a pretty impressive system. I've learned a lot about it, and I at this point would encourage the town to consider that as well.
So is that something that the system buys and installs, or is that something that customers opt into and are charged for? How does that work?
No, basically what you do is you can take many of the existing meters and just connect them into they have a device. If you want to spend more time to talk about it, I have the equipment here. You know, it's about $200 per unit to put these in. And then it's, the system is operated by the service area, or in your case, it would be the town. And then you are billed 89 cents per month per connection for the service. So we have built it into our rate structure, so the customer is not paying for it, but we figure that we will, easily recover that. It's not a significant cost, and it's a significant time saver. And again, this is water conservation. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
20,000 a year, is that, is it 20,000 a year or 20,000 over 3 years?
No, it's 20,000. The first year will be 20,000, and then we'll do 10,000 a year to get all the one thing is the hotels have larger meters than, say, the residential ones, and so they're a little bit more expensive. So our main thing right now is to get the residents on it. And part of that is that way we can also monitor overages in the residential units.
Okay. And then
go ahead.
On your water rate study, was that, did you have someone do that, like the Rural Water Association, or?
No, we did it ourselves, just doing a comparison with similar and mountain communities within the state. The rural water can do that for you if you wanted to have them come in, and we'd be happy to work with them. We can talk through that, but I just would like to be thinking about this, something that maybe when you do your 2022 budget, because I'm on a calendar year and you're not, but that's why we're just implementing this right now. And you guys will probably see the letter that goes out to the residents in the service area about us getting access in to replace the meters. Let's see. The only other thing is I've submitted to the state for the operating permit for the upgrades we did to the water system. And then you guys also paid a portion for the capital improvements on the sewer line that went on this last. It was just under $27,000, I think, that the town paid as their portion of the sewer line improvement project that we did, where we actually eliminated 6 manholes running a new sewer line through a portion of the Snowbird Resort. Let's see, last thing, the media. Remember, I think the last time I talked with you guys, we were having an issue with the media. The media has been disposed of. It was a little more expensive than we had anticipated. But, and I'm hoping that maybe in the future that won't be the case.
Did you, if I recall, it was cadmium was the problem?
Yeah, it was
elevated cadmium.
Yeah, it was elevated levels of cadmium in the sludge, and one other, and I think lead was initially it, but
Maybe mercury, maybe? I couldn't remember.
mercury. Somebody just said that, and there was some mercury in that, which is, it's really interesting because we don't show those contaminants at levels that are above the maximum contaminant limit in our drinking waters, the raw water. So it's a little puzzling.
Every once in a while, I have a conversation with Salt Lake City Public Utilities on issues of common interest, and I happened to mention to Laura Briefer that we had incurred a little bit higher cost to dispose of this, spent media, and mentioned the cadmium in there. And she told me that she might be interested in having a conversation with you about where that might be coming from. So,
that would be good. Yeah.
And I just had kind of a niggling question. I'm hoping we didn't just move that to a different community and now it's their pollutant problem.
It went to Grassy Mountain out in the West Desert, where they store, and it is not a hazardous waste. It's not classified as hazardous. What they do with that media then is it goes into one of those, they mix it with concrete, and then that concrete goes into one of those large cells that's out there in the West Desert. So good question.
Never to be heard from again is the idea, but of course that's not the way.
Yeah.
If you think geologically, it doesn't work out quite like that, but people don't tend to think in those many years. So.
Keith, I'm curious, did you ponder whether or not the earthquake could have factored into that?
We didn't, I haven't significantly, because of the fact that our distance from the earthquake. We saw after the earthquake, we went through all the tunnels and looked, and that's the stuff that's down below. But, I don't believe that had any effect on the area here in Little Cottonwood Canyon. Not to say one can't, but that's one of those things I worry about.
Yeah. Good riddance to 2020.
Yeah.
Is there any cybersecurity issue with that cloud-based water meter system?
That's a good question. It's, and because I'm not the IT wizard, but I did extensive research with other communities that use it, and it is, quite secure. That's the best I can say. Is I'm comfortable with it, and that doesn't mean that it's not fallible.
Okay. Yeah, we don't want to march on the service area claiming fraud in their water bill.
So I just had a question, and I don't know if either Keith or John would be interested in this, but I thought that Water Now was doing additional assistance and help specifically related to water conservation, that maybe that would be a way for additional funds to come to the town for these meter upgrades or whatever. Just, I throw that out there.
That's a great idea. I like that. And I think, because this has been pretty, I've just preliminarily talked with John and Piper about this. And so we're just starting it, but I thought we're pretty excited about it down here. And I think that, there potentially could be a way to get some savings that way.
Good. Thank you, Keith. Are there any other questions for Keith? Good.
So one thing, Mayor, I would like to personally thank you and Chris for what you've done to get the ski patrollers vaccinated. As a 30-year member of the Snowbird Ski Patrol, that was quite a surprise. And it is unfortunate that our water workers are kind of falling behind a little bit on this stuff, because they've basically been working all through this. But
yeah, I have been part of conversations at the county about municipal and county utility workers, and they were talking about this, some of this wastewater treatment and water, and unfortunately, these are not decisions being made at the county. So as sympathetic as the county has been to those requests, it's not really getting a lot of purchase so far. I mean, part of what's frustrating is the rollout of this vaccine has been so inefficient that I don't feel like the 200 patrollers really got in the way of anybody, for example. That's not where the bottleneck is occurring, is what it seems to me. And I will bring it up again. I do have the ear. So it turns out the dean of the business school, who is my boss at the business school, is on the governor's, he's the head of the governor's economic recovery task force. And I can bring it up in the tourism recovery task force, and I can bring it up in a personal communication with my dean to try and get that mentioned at the governor's office.
yeah, we've been applying pressure from the Rural Water Association, and what anything we can do to get our operators protected. But I really appreciate what you guys did. That was actually quite a surprise, and thank you.
Yeah, well, we're glad that we could do it.
Anything
right.
else?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to sign off. I'll see you guys out on the hill.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda, I think this is going to be Polly probably, and John, and our guest Thede Is it Chapel? Is that how you pronounce your last name? I'm not sure. To talk about the CPACE resolution and authorization to enter into the agreement. So this is there a resolution in front of us on this? No.
Yes.
Why am I not seeing that? Hold on, let me go to the website. I see the fiscal budget.
There should be a resolution, and the resolution has everything else as an attachment.
I don't see it on our website either.
Is the resolution part of the agreement, Polly?
Yeah, the resolution.
Can't hear you again.
Sorry, I've been having trouble all day. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the resolution, let me just find it again. I should have double checked that you got it. There were so many documents. I kind of,
Yeah, there were a lot of documents this time. I just don't think that I saw it. I can go back to my email too,
well,
but I don't see it on the website.
I don't think I numbered one.
uh-oh, because I'm going to send my draft to,
Did Cliff, you had a
Piper.
question about this issue. Did you notice a document that we would need to pass?
I missed the fact that apparently the resolution is missing. So that wasn't what I
Okay.
directed my attention toward.
Yeah. Okay.
Should I send this to Piper or to Jen? Or send it to both of you?
You can send it to me. I can send it out now.
Okay, I just sent it. It's
See,
two.
R1 and R2. One was the budget. R2 is the budget, and R1 was the water.
Right.
And I numbered it R2, but it should, because I knew about the budget. So this should be R3. Did
Okay.
it come through?
Yeah, I've got it. Well, I'll renumber it.
Okay.
Are you posting that as well, Piper? Or are you gonna want me to do that?
No, I'll just edit it and send it out to the council.
Doesn't it need to go on the website?
Eventually. I mean, that's okay. We don't need to do that this
It,
time.
it is on the agenda, so we just didn't have the resolution language on so far. But why don't you, as Piper is doing that, why don't we talk about the background for this? Cliff posed a couple of pretty good questions, which is, who does this benefit, and how does it benefit the town of Alta? Why would the town of Alta do this? And my impression, Cliff, I started to draft your response, and then I just thought, well, this is something we're going to discuss, and other people would have this question. It benefits the Snowpine by lowering their borrowing costs. And how does that benefit us? At least this is my understanding. Polly, please jump in if I'm making a mistake. It lowers their borrowing costs, which is a good thing for the town, partly because we want them to succeed as a business. And so lower borrowing costs are good. And then the other thing is this whole program is about energy, about environmental sustainability. That's the purpose of this. I'm a little confused about whether or not this is retroactive to what they did do, or if they're planning to use this savings for future improvements.
Now, this is retroactive to what they did do. It's allowed under the program, and it's the, we had them actually update the eligibility document to reflect that this isn't a retrofit. This is just basically a refinance.
Okay. And that was what, as I was drafting my response to you, Cliff, I got hung up on that issue. I realized I didn't know that, so I stopped writing. One other, I guess it's really, it just kind of threw this off, was that in working on these documents, we found that in fact, the size of the building was a little bigger than what we had understood it to have been planned to be. And so the town benefited by having a higher, John, jump in here with me, a higher assessment.
Because the building was about 5,000 square feet larger than what we permitted and inspected for, we ended up with with building permit, plan check, electrical and impact, about 24,000 extra dollars.
So,
And that's important because it would be difficult for us to support a program with different numbers for a building that we had permitted and that showed up at Salt Lake County under the assessment. So we had to make sure that everything was equal.
right. So that isn't really a benefit of the program, but it's a benefit of them, of the Snow Pine being engaged with this program. And so otherwise we would not have discovered this discrepancy, I think. Okay, so Polly, Dee Dee.
Holly, did you want me, I had prepared a statement, kind of an opening statement for the earlier portion of the meeting. Should I read that now?
It's up to, this is your opportunity to present the program and introduce this concept to the council.
All right. I will, I had, like I said, I had a written statement because I wanted to stay within my time frame. But first of all, thank you for allowing me to speak to the council. And some of you may remember that I attended the December meeting and answered, several questions from Mayor Sondak. I'm also available to answer any questions you may have now. And I'm accompanied today by representatives from Greenworks Lending, who are the capital providers for the CPACE project associated with the Snow Pine Lodge. Relative to the program itself, it was adopted as part of Utah statute in an effort by the Governor's Office of Energy Development, OED, to promote and facilitate a more energy efficient, cleaner built environment here in Utah. The program is based upon stringent eligibility requirements in the areas of energy and water conservation. And the Utah program also includes seismic upgrades. Nationally, CPACE funding has been one of the most successful initiatives in our real estate history to encourage development of cleaner, higher performing buildings and upgrades of existing structures. Cities, towns, and counties have taken great pride in offering this alternative to property owners to encourage development of higher quality, more efficient buildings and upgrades of existing facilities. Any and all projects wishing to participate in CPACE must provide explicit documentable evidence that the improvements submitted for consideration meet the requirements of the Utah statute. The company I work for, SRS, as the third-party administrator for OED and various municipalities across the state, verifies those submittals through a rigorous review of both the technical and statutory requirements. The technical review is completed by a team of qualified engineers with more than a decade of experience in just this type of work and access to information in our internal database that includes specific details on more than 10,000 energy and related projects across the U.S. To date, we have completed 5 CPACE transactions in Utah and have several others in the pipeline. The documents and due diligence utilized for those projects and transactions are the same that are being employed for the Snow Pine Lodge. I've worked with Polly throughout this process and am aware that she has performed extensive due diligence on both the program and the related documents. I should also note that there has been a significant investment of both time and resources by all stakeholders in the Snow Pine Lodge project. I'm aware that the owner appeared before the council back in November of last year to alert you of his intentions. And then I attended the December meeting to invite anyone with questions about the program to reach out to me if they had any. And then finally today, we are very hopeful to get the process finalized. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. And if there are questions, I'm available to answer any about the program, and I believe that Rob Yukas is available to answer any about the specific lending aspects.
And Polly, did you want to address any concerns? I mean, you don't have concerns about liability or subordinated positioning in terms of a bankruptcy on tax revenue or anything like that.
No, we put in, we added language into our agreement that would make us senior to this lien for any tax lien associated with the town. And then there was also, I spoke with the Attorney General's office that used to administer this, and she expressed to me that there had been concerns that a town would have to be part of the process if there was a tax sale. And so what we did was put language into that agreement saying that we would not be obligated to basically do anything if they do need to foreclose upon the owner, then that is all they're doing and we don't have to do any work associated with it.
Yeah, and I'll point out that I know Polly spent a fair amount of time on this, and I'll just share with the town council some of the complimentary remarks I've heard about Polly's due diligence. So thank you, Polly. And I think if I remember right, just the other day I got an email that said that her legal fees are actually are going to be reimbursed.
Correct.
So it wasn't even a cost to the town to get this done. Okay, we now, you all just received, and I can share the resolution.
Point out a
So
couple things. This is Jen.
Yeah,
We also I have posted the resolution to the website, so it's live there. And then we also have another gentleman, Robert. Oops, you just clicked, so I lost looking at his name. Robert, I'm sorry. I forgot your last name.
You guys, nice to meet you all.
Okay, there he is. Thank you. My apologies. And he's available to answer any questions that the council has.
so what we're talking about is this resolution now.
And all the documents that were sent out to the council are exhibits to this resolution.
So as my understanding is that Polly's advice is that there really is no exposure to the town on this and only an upside to participating.
Correct.
What is an energy assessment and why are we assigning that? And could the town get that energy assessment absent this assignment that would benefit the town?
Hey Harris, can I move that we, do I need to make a motion so we can open this up for discussion on this resolution?
Sure. So you go ahead and make a motion.
I move that we open up discussion for resolution number 2021 R3.
Or
Make a motion, sorry.
The form of your motion should be I think to be you move that we adopt it.
Sorry, I move that we adopt resolution number 2021 R3.
Okay. I'll second that to facilitate the conversation. Okay. Margaret's question is about, as I understood it, she's basically asking a question about opportunity costs to the town.
I could make one comment and then, first of all, I will say I am not an attorney in no way, shape or form, but relative to the characterization energy assessment area, that is a term in statute that is a reference to the tax parcel that this lien and assessment is placed upon. It's, a voluntary assessment that the owner requests, and it's the equivalent based on my discussions with the assistant AG of a water or sewer assessment. But it's a terminology, again, that characterization was created for the statute to identify that particular tax parcel per se.
So it's not a tax that we could levy.
It is in no way related to taxes or the tax rolls whatsoever. It's a separate, and the lien basically or assessment is placed on the property and then contemporaneously assigned to the third party lender. So there really is, you know, as I do realize, very little risk. In fact, your involvement lasts as long just about as it takes to sign those documents.
And right, that's correct. The assessment, there is the ability, if we wanted to kind of to administer the program, we could do that. But the program allows for this third party lender and program administrator so that we don't really have to get involved. It took me a while to wrap my head around the whole concept of this, and which is part of why I did so much due diligence, because it just seemed bizarre. But my understanding of it is that by giving over that assessment, by assigning that right, the lenders can give a better rate to the properties for these purposes because they're first in line. It pushes them ahead of other lenders.
One other consideration that you might want to take, or one other thing you might want to consider is the fact that the underwriting CPACE loans are based on the savings projected from the building performance. That obviously is not necessarily related to seismic upgrades, but those are extremely expensive, and the state, you know, sought to include those because of our, you know, our history around here. But these aren't necessarily off balance sheet per se, but they are based on savings that the building will achieve because of these upgrades. So that really is a reduction in the type of risk. It's not based on owner's credit worthiness or things of that nature. It's on building performance per se.
I mean, I'll add that the Snow Pine is quite keen on our facilitating this. The owner has said to me that this is a critical component of being able to keep the business afloat.
It falls under the category of retrofinancing, which allows an owner to deploy their capital. And in times like this, particularly, well, you would know better than anyone in the resort industry, it's very difficult to manage that.
Okay. Are there concerns on the town council, or can we move forward with this?
Well, I have concerns. I mean, I can't read a resolution and listen to people talking at the same time. So I'm not prepared to sign off on a resolution. I still have questions. It was stated that the town has no obligation, and yet there are, as I read it, monthly reporting to the town based upon this. And so I don't know what sort of administrative costs may be involved by staff related there too. So, I mean, to me, I understand that the Snow Pine wants this done very quickly, and I fully appreciate that, but getting documents over the weekend and this resolution today has not given me sufficient time to decide to move forward. So that's my comment. It may be in a day or two, I've got enough time, information to proceed, but that's where I am.
If I may, this is Rob Bucas from Greenworks. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to reiterate that there are no obligations on the part of the town. The capital provider does have an obligation to provide reports to the town. The town could immediately trash those reports if they wanted to. It's just confirmation of the payment received from the property owner. This is a financing tool for the town to allow economic development and energy savings for the property owner. I think it would be very beneficial to the Snow Pine Lodge to be able to access this capital, because then they can essentially reallocate those funds to other needed capital improvements, retain better financial stability, and then ensure a strong financial future, continue operating and attracting tourism to Alta. In addition, it's been my experience at Greenworks that once one transaction has been sort of consummated in a town, it sort of picks up popularity amongst the property owners and might encourage other property owners to decrease their energy efficiency, or increase rather their energy efficiency, and use the capital providers financing.
I can say that I've been informed that the monthly reporting, well, first of all, there won't be anything until 2024. And then thereafter, I believe it's going to be an annual payment. So we will basically be getting a list, 11 zeros, and then whatever their annual payment is. And that requirement for that monthly reporting is a requirement in the state statute. And so I was very careful to make sure that we adhere to everything that's in the state statute. Again, the other thing that I've kind of learned in my due diligence of this is that it seems that the program has kind of evolved, or maybe devolved. I'm not quite sure which direction, but it started off as a program that was administered by the state, and then the state no longer wanted to. And so they've pushed it off to municipalities and or counties. And but you can't do it by a county if you're already in a municipality. And so I think a lot of the language in the state law that allows for it is with the idea of the state being more involved and monitoring it more closely. But if they do, the worst case scenario would be that they foreclose, that they don't pay their assessments. And then that is between the lender and them in terms of how the lender tries to collect their money, and they have the ability to, be first in the lien, and we would have no liability or expense related to that.
And just to add to that, not only does the town not have any obligations in relation to the program, but in addition, the capital provider is obligated to indemnify the town for sort of anything related to or arising from the transaction.
Thanks, Rob. I was going to point that out, and also that the OED, we do serve as a third-party administrator, so we handle all the day-to-day work of the of the administrating of the program anyway. So whether our relationship is directly with cities or counties or with the state, we are the ones that try to manage the documents, et cetera, and take as much of the burden off of any city or town as possible. That's the purpose of a third-party administrator.
Well, I think that it's, I would like to have gotten these documents and this resolution language prior to just now, but I'm also willing to, but it may be that I've been more involved in this, but I'm willing to rely on the advice of our attorney on this and move forward on behalf of our lodge owners. I think that I know it is in the sense that we didn't have this ahead of time, it feels perhaps rushed. But I also know that the Pratts have been working on this for a long time, and that because of the issues with the square footage of the building and the assessment, and Polly's wanting to make sure she understood what this program was, I think the Pratts would have been, I think they were expecting this to be done in October.
Maybe December.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly not next month.
Yeah, let me speak to this. What ideally, and everybody who's been involved in this has done their part capably. However, ideally, this is a complicated deal. And it's something never any of us have ever seen before. And so I think ideally to present this to a body like this town council, we'd like to see a PowerPoint presentation that would have boxes and arrows and where's the money coming from and where's the money going to. And this is an explanation of the program that, like we were saying before, an intelligent sixth grader could comprehend in about 15 minutes. And although, you know, I think that would be the ideal way to present it. As a matter of pragmatism, I think we have capable experts who have advised us on this. And in the circumstances, we would do well to move forward for the benefit of a part of our business community. So on that basis, I'm prepared to vote for the resolution.
Okay, well then, then I'll call the question and say all those in favor of adopting resolution 2021 R3, a resolution to authorize me to enter into an agreement with Greenworks Lending LLC, designate an energy assessment area, levy a CPACE assessment, and assign the assessment for the Snow Pine Lodge project in Alta, Utah. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
I'm abstaining.
As am I.
Okay. Okay. Well, there were 3 ayes and 2 abstentions, so we can let we can move on with this then. Thank you,
Thank you for
Thede
your time.
and Robert. Okay. The next item on our agenda is discussion of possible action on resolution 2021 R2, which adopts the amended budget that we discussed in our work session. Let me put the resolution up. Okay. Which is here. It's quite short, actually. You've seen the budget. Okay. So I would invite a motion to adopt resolution 2021 R2.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Cliff. I think Elise got in there a little sooner, but I don't know. It might be that she's just in the center of my Zoom array. Okay. Any discussion? Or did we talk about it enough in the work session?
Well, I wanted to propose, and I don't know if this is a separate motion, but I didn't want to necessarily adopt the numbers as were indicated, as I suggested. I would like to not necessarily set things aside for ACVB, but also include other things for a possible business license study, which we all, I thought, in December felt that it would be worthwhile to upgrade or update the 2013 study that Zions Bank Public Finance did. So, and there's no money potentially available for that. I understand the issue that we don't want to spend money that we don't have, but if we don't account for it as a possibility, then we couldn't spend it even if we had sufficient funds available. So it was related to the ACVB 42,000 that was there that I thought we potentially could take a portion of that and apply to potential bonuses, again, if it was available. and a portion of that for updating our business license study as a way of potentially getting additional revenues for future years.
Well, we will have to amend the budget in May in any case, and that we would have all of our revenue data then, and it would seem to me that that's the right time to do this, to make another amendment where we expect to spend money beyond. I mean, we were pretty careful in putting this together to have it's page 11 where the totals are, right, Piper?
I believe so. I'm trying to, page 8.
Oh, page 8.
General.
Okay. Yeah. So, right, we were pretty careful not to spend much different money than we had budgeted. Most of this, half of this difference is the $15,000 for the police. I don't remember what the other part is, just small adjustments that accumulated in terms of what we've really spent. So I'm not keen on adding to expenses. Where is ACVB in here?
It's in the lower 1070. It's not.
So it's on page 5, I believe.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we did not think about changing that. That's true, but it might be a source of, if we don't end up spending that. I don't remember, Chris, what we agreed to with ACVB, but I think ACVB is expecting us to honor that commitment.
Yeah, the town council has not really determined what to do with that, and that's why I left it in there. And I mean, I'm not sure if Margaret has any idea on the cost of that study, but I mean, I would think that if at a later time, the council decides that they want to reduce let's say, reduce the 42,000, and if it's 5,000 for the study, then, you know, you could shuffle things around that way if you wanted to address it in February or March or April. But it is a process to have a budget hearing and to go through the process. And June is the time when you can actually pass another budget. So, I mean,
Yeah,
you can pass the budget anytime, but the whole thing at once. Yeah.
I mean, we tend to do a budget amendment every month at the UFA because there's always, I don't know, you know, they get more money than they expected to on the sale of a fire truck or something like that. So, you know, you saw how cumbersome it was to have that public hearing. We will, depending on the amount of money, I think we need a procurement plan if we are going forward with hiring a consultant too.
Sure, but I mean, we know that we spent 10,000 in 2013, and I'm not suggesting that we hire somebody at this point. As you say, a procurement plan may be necessary, but I'm just suggesting that, as I understand it, we have not committed to the $42,000 going to ACVB. And I'm suggesting not that we increase our budget, but that we leave available repurposing some of that to something else besides ACVB. And the two things that I mentioned were potential sources for some or all of that. Well, I don't think we would need all of that for the two things that I've mentioned, but there may be others that feel that there are other worthy expenditures that the town should consider at this point. And since we had the public hearing today, sorry.
My bad. Well, based on a December conversation, it was my understanding that most of the council was in support of looking at updating that review of business licenses. Speaking for myself, I'm not comfortable earmarking that much money to ACBB, especially given the changed nature of most of it going to ACE, which is now a for-profit and nonprofit entity. And I think we need to examine that as a council. So I would be very comfortable taking some of the funds that are currently designated to go to ACBB to be earmarked, say 10 grand, towards an upgraded business license study that's not more than a decade old.
Cliff, Elise?
Oh, I would say let's address those substantive issues in an orderly manner and have a full debate and discussion on them. And then whatever comes out of those council actions, we can then amend the budget again to reflect that.
I'm leaning a little more towards what Cliff said. I know we've made it through December and the ski area is reporting good numbers, and I'm still I still want us to be cautious in our budget. So part of me wonders if we should just wait a little bit on this. And I also just want to double check that maybe Chris can weigh in on this, the ACBB contribution. I just want to make sure they're not expecting that, or, you know, some of that. So before we change anything, we should probably look that over.
Chris, do you want to address that issue?
Yeah, sorry, I have my Zoom window open on my screen to the side, and I'm like looking across the camera. Okay, hi.
Hi.
And I'm just not going to see myself, I guess. So, yeah,
If I stop sharing, maybe you will.
Say it again.
If I stop sharing, maybe you will.
That's
what
okay.
I said.
Yeah, ACBB has been moving forward with ACE for ACE to perform some of the functions that we mutually agree between ACBB and ACE were a better fit for ACE. And we are moving towards being in an agreement with ACE in the amount of something like $25,000, I think, some of which is going to be one-time costs to build, member listings on the website and some other things. And, I'm not prepared to try to describe what our outlay will be for the year at this point beyond that. But, obviously holding events, which is something that we envision being something ACBB would spend money on, is going to be challenging during the remainder of this fiscal year. There are just a lot of components of that plan we laid out that are going to be a challenge for us to realize. So, I don't want to say we're not expecting the funds the town budgeted this year, but I just don't know how much of an active year we're going to end up having at this point.
So as I said to Margaret in a two-way conversation, what I would request is that we just move forward with this so that I can tell Mike Morey he can go buy that RMS and then and capture that discount. And then if there's better information next month, then we just act on that better information when we get it. And it's now 6:15, which I thought we were going to make up some of the time that we didn't spend on the hearing. So I'd like to move forward with this and call the question.
So is it not possible then to amend the amended? Is that what you're saying? That we either have to vote it up or down as it is?
You can make a motion to amend the motion.
Okay, well, I amend the motion that the 2020, the budget, the proposed amended budget be further modified to reduce the contribution to ACVB to 25,000, and that the additional funds that were otherwise allocated in this budget be set aside for the purpose of a potential business license study and or employee bonuses for the year.
Is there a second to that amendment?
Seconded.
Okay, I'm going to speak against it, Margaret, for the reasons I've already told you. I just think that right now is not the time to make a new commitment of funds, and whether to the employees or anywhere else. So, you know, and the fact that we haven't given it to ACVB may be that we have to draw on that. Right now, if we don't have enough money to operate the town, I'll be suggesting that we raid the savings accounts in the water fund and whatever's left in the savings account, the sewer fund. The water fund is not very solvent, unfortunately, but we can leave that debt alone. And, you know, so there's a few $100,000 to have us limp through the year. But I don't want to say to the, and I also don't want to set expectations with the staff. They know my intention.
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. In order to write that motion to amend, I would need numbers. So 25,000 would be on the ACVB, that we would leave that there. Is that right?
And then 17,000,
And then
between 42 and 25. Margaret's, as I understood her motion, it would be that money is earmarked for one of two other purposes, either a business license study or staff bonuses.
And would you like me to split that 17 in half and put it in two different places, or?
I didn't hear her say that.
That was my proposal, that it would cover both of those things, the business license study and bonuses.
Half and half, because one line item would be the business license study, right?
Yeah, that would be fine. I mean, we certainly could amend it later if it turns out that that's too high an amount or insufficient for staff bonuses.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment that Margaret has offered, which is to take 42,000 out of the budget from 25, to lower the ACVB amount to 25,000 and put 8,500 in a business license study and additional 8,500 in staff bonuses. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Say no. No.
No.
No.
Okay, the amendment fails. Okay, so now we're back to the main motion, which is to adopt the amended the budget as amended in the package that you received, and that would be resolution 2021 R2. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No, sorry, I just had a procedural question. Can I take a different position on this than I took on the other one?
Yeah.
On the amendment to the motion?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Then I will vote in favor of this.
Okay. Okay, so that passes unanimously. And Margaret, let's work on this business license study, because, you know, I'm hoping that we're going to have a good year and that we will want to spend the money on it. We're headed in the right direction, I think, at least in terms of ski area lift ticket sales. Although, like I said, I think we are attracting the risk tolerant customers. So I'm a little worried that what we are getting are the folks who go to a party in San Diego and then, like I said, get on the airplane. So or New Orleans or Miami, doesn't have to be San Diego. Okay, discussion of possible action to approve the capital projects plan. Basically, what we're trying to do here is park some money, right? To comply with our auditor's concern.
We are updating the projects plan. And we talked about, and part of that budget was to move 10,000 over there. That's more like a placeholder because probably in June, we're going to have too much money in our general fund balance. And we probably want to, when we do an amendment, we will want to raise that amount of transfer to capital projects.
Why are we doing this now?
Because we do not have a current approved capital projects plan.
And we need to have one?
Yes, you should have any money in that fund should be allocated to projects. Even if they are building a community center in 4 or 5 years from now and building up a balance for that.
Okay. Okay, the reason why I was asking about whether we needed to do this now is because it's, you know, we're 20 minutes past the scheduled end of our meeting and I want to respect that. Is this something that we can postpone or is this something we need to do?
You can amend it at any time. It's important to have a plan in place, is my understanding.
All right, Chris, do you want to address this?
I don't have anything specific to say that I didn't provide in that staff report.
Okay, so is there anything that we need to do here other than have a vote to adopt this plan as written?
That's it.
That's what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody care to make that motion?
So moved.
Okay. Second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Sorry,
And-
did it, who did the motion? Was that Sheridan or Elise?
No, it was Elise and Margaret was the who
Okay,
seconded.
thank you.
Okay, is there additional conversation about this right now? Knowing that we can always come back to this.
I just had a question about it in terms of the comment that the $75,000 of impact fees in the capital projects fund to be reprogrammed for a future community center study effort. If we've already used the funds from impact study for something else, is it appropriate to use the 75K that was part of the impact funds in the capital projects fund? Sorry, you're giving me a quizzical look, and part of it here is
I'm trying to follow you in the document, but I'm not seeing where.
Oh, so I think it may be for fiscal year 20 that we approved $75,000. So I think it's sheet number 2 or something. I'm not sure. This is in part a response to a question that I sent that Chris responded to me late last night. And he said that we were looking to repurpose in the 2021 plan the $75,000 in the capital projects fund that was set aside for the community center project.
Oh,
So sorry. So I don't know that his language of reprogramming was actually in the document itself, is more of a response to me.
I think the idea was that we had expected that to be a capital project, and then because, frankly, of the clever work by the staff, they figured out that the impact fee money needed to be spent and was available for that purpose, freeing up that 75,000. So it needs to go somewhere. Am I understanding that correctly?
And it's not the same 75,000. I'm not looking at the capital projects plan, but it's for further development towards the community center. Is that right, Chris? It's not for the same project. It's not, yeah.
I think what Margaret is asking about is the fact that we approved $75,000 for what became the feasibility study in the 2020 plan. What's up with that money now? Because we wound up spending impact fee money on that project. And what's up with that money now is that it's still in the account, and the one effect of approving an updated capital projects plan for fiscal year 2021 is to reprogram or repurpose or reallocate that money for different projects. But I may not have followed the another comment that you all were just making about the future capital projects plan.
Yeah,
No,
I
think sorry.
I was just going to add that legally you have a lot of latitude when it comes to capital projects funds. It has to be allocated to something, but as long as you have a general plan or a specific enough plan, it can be changed repeatedly. And so the idea of kind of changing what the ultimate goal is not a problem at all under the state statutes.
Thank you. That answers my question, because as we've seen from so many of these other improvements that the town needs, that it may be that 75K is better used for the geotechnical retrofit of the community center library slope or something else, and that we're not necessarily saying that we have agreed that another report relating to the community center is what we've earmarked that for. So it can be repurposed, and we're just putting it there as a placeholder for now, because we have to keep it out. We have to take it out of the general fund in order not to exceed 75%.
That's consistent with my understanding.
Okay.
Polly, Chris, you
Yeah.
agree with me?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
So you just can't hold more than 75%. And if you put it in that capital, you can't put it back into the general fund, but you can use it for capital projects. And that's part of the way it's organized, is that it can change as goals.
Well, if our general fund balance was low, we can put it back in the general fund if we need it for operations. We can move it back and forth. Just can't end up the year with that over that cap. Sorry, Chris.
I need to get off this Zoom call right now to start another Zoom call at 6:30. So if anybody has any more questions for me, you can ask them briefly right now, or you can shoot me an email afterwards.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah. So this is not. I mean, the money gets spent through the budget, not by having it be in this category.
Yeah.
Yeah. This isn't like we're agreeing to disperse it this way. Okay. So I can't remember. We do have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. Cliff, I didn't catch your response. Okay.
I got him. All in favor.
Okay, good. All right, new business. Thank you, everybody. Is there new business to come up now? I know, Margaret, you want for next month, you want the business license study to be on the agenda.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Good. All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay.
All right, John, you look cold. in your, maybe you look warm now, but it looks
No,
like.
but it's freezing in this room that I'm in. It's like,
I have to do the same thing. I put on